Well, good Friday to you, Denver. This is Jeff with the Jeff and Bill Show. You've tuned in to 710 KNUS, bringing you the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, and center, and crazy. We're going to be covering it all. It was a wild night. I was up late, and it wasn't the basketball game that was part of it. It was this horse race in Congressional District 4 to nominate the Republican to replace Ken Buck. And it was absolutely a horse race. I feel, did you ever see the movie Seabiscuit?
Yes.
I feel like the guy, the little radio guy in Seabiscuit.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
Where I go, it came down to a nose at the very end. I mean, it was amazing.
Oh, good.
Greg Lopez pulled off an Abraham Lincoln. And when I tweeted that, everybody on Twitter was like, what do you mean? This is not
yeah.
Okay.
You're like, wait, who shot him? That's what they were thinking. They were like, I'm sorry. That was very morbid, but funny. Okay, so go ahead.
So,
what do you do?
When Abraham Lincoln went to the presidential convention, what year was that? 1860? I think it was the 1860 presidential convention. One of those dates around there. He was not anybody's first place pick.
Yeah.
In fact, it was a very contentious Republican nominating convention. And you had Stewart, you had all these guys that were well known within the Republican Party, held major office before. Yeah. And Abraham Lincoln had been a one-term congressman.
Yeah. And the Republican Party is fairly new at that point, too.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, very new. Yeah.
And so, but he was everybody's safe second pick. And when all the major guys deadlocked, like they did last night in CD4, primarily Ted Harvey and Jerry Sonnenberg. Remember, Lauren Boebert wasn't going to participate, and Deborah Flora weren't going to participate either. So when all of those deadlocked, who became the safe second pick? Greg Lopez did.
Smart.
Greg Lopez will be the Republican nominee to fill Ken Buck's seat. This upcoming June, they will do a special election June 25th. He won with only 51 votes. He will be a...
Wow. Now, has he pledged to just serve out this term and then go bye-bye?
Yep,
that,
exactly.
That, I think, is very, very smart and very strategic. And I have to admit, I'm somewhat surprised that the Colorado GOP party took the smart and strategic rather than making a statement, rather than the chance to make this kind of a statement. So I'm very intrigued by this idea because it really does, in my opinion, level the playing field come for the seat up for grabs this fall.
And that was his argument.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
It's a great argument.
I'll walk you through the details and then we'll get to the news with Blake. So 111 delegates were the original delegates to show up. And these are essentially leaders in the different counties in CD4.
Yeah.
Okay. So 111, 97 show up. So in order to win, you needed 49 votes.
Wow.
Okay. The candidates that showed up to get those 49 votes: Peter Yu, Mike Lynch, Scott Melby, Chris Fellon, Floyd Trujillo, Richard Holtorf, Ted Harvey, Jerry Sonnenberg, and Greg Lopez. So all those guys show up. Okay.
Yeah.
Most of them are declared candidates. And in this case, I believe the only one that wasn't, what they call a placeholder, was Greg Lopez. And Greg basically called all 111 of those voters or of the folks that were going to vote in this and said, I'm not even going to hang anything on the wall.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a solid vote with Mike Johnston for the conservative Republicans in the House. And you're not going to have to worry about me. And you don't have to make the hard decision of picking any one in all of those 11, 12 that are running in that competitive Republican primary. You don't have to betray any of your friends. And
that's smart. That's
all of those folks have asked me for endorsements, and I've told them, you're all my friends. I'm not going to get into this race. It's like, hey, we're all buddies. I'm not going to make anyone mad.
And strategically, very smart of Greg. The idea that I'm the one person you can choose that doesn't make anybody else mad. Yep. Very smart. Very smart.
Yep. So first vote comes around. And he finishes third. Okay. First place, Ted Harvey, who was in studio.
Yeah,
so Ted Harvey starts off with 49, followed by Jerry Sonnenberg with 23 votes. Then tied for third were Greg Lopez and Richard Holtorf, who got 12 votes each, and then Mike Lynch with 11, Scott Melby, Chris Fellon. And what they did was the lowest guys kept dropping out. So if you were the lowest, you were out, and you got to get up and give a speech as to who you would like those that voted for you to consider voting for.
Just an observation that is, I understand why they're doing it, but that's sort of like ranked choice voting. It's kind of funny. I mean, it's not exactly, but that's kind of funny. It makes total sense doing that, but yeah, it's funny that that's the process. It's not ranked choice voting, but that's a process of eliminating the last one is kind of what they do. But okay, go ahead. This is interesting.
So you get to get, and you can't, you as the candidate don't get to automatically tell where your delegates can go. You don't have that power.
You just suggest. You say, hey, I like this person. Yeah. You don't do the if you donate to them, you're excommunicated. You don't get to do that.
And right, exactly. Okay, and so the guess who they have an incentive to get in?
Oh, Greg
Lopez, right? Because you're running against all these other guys.
Yep.
So one by one, they get up and they start going, Greg Lopez, Lopez, because they don't want somebody there in a competitive primary to actually win, because that's going to give them a huge advantage.
Yeah.
So Scott Melby, Chris Fellon, Peter Yu, Ford Trujillo, all out the first round, all get up and go, we think Greg Lopez. Okay. So then next round comes.
He was a horrible idea a minute ago. That was a good idea. But I love this. This is intriguing. Yeah.
So Ted Harvey then pulls a little bit further ahead, 27 votes, followed by Jerry Sonnenberg at 24. Then Greg Lopez secures third. So he's no longer tied with Richard Holtorf. He secures third at 17 votes, Richard Holtorf at 13 votes, and then Mike Lynch at 10. So then they go to the third round of voting, and Greg Lopez now jumps to the front. Greg Lopez, 27, Ted Harvey, 24, Jerry Sonnenberg, 24, Richard Holtorf, 16, Mike Lynch then at the bottom. So Mike then gets up and goes, you know who you should pick? Greg Lopez.
Oh, my goodness.
So Lynch's guys then go to Lopez. So on the fourth round, Lopez, 34, Ted Harvey. So now Lopez is starting to pull ahead. Holtorf is now at the bottom, 14 votes. Richard Holtorf gets up, and guess who he says?
Greg Lopez.
Greg Lopez.
Oh, my goodness.
So then Greg even gets further. But in the fifth round, Greg Lopez is at 45, Jerry Sonnenberg 30, Ted Harvey 23. There's only three guys left.
Wow.
Ted Harvey throws a wrench into the whole thing.
Yeah.
This was amazing. This is when it really became a horse race.
He says, I'm a Democrat.
Yeah, right,
no, I'm kidding.
Right.
Yeah, surprise.
So Ted Harvey.
He pulls off his mask, and it's actually Jenna Griswold underneath, like Scooby-Doo. Nah, my plan is working. No, I'm kidding. Okay, go ahead.
So at this point, Ted Harvey is frustrated that this placeholder is going to win. And Greg Lopez did a very smart thing.
Yeah.
In the run-up to this, not only did he call all 111 voting leaders, he called Lauren Boebert and Deborah Flora over this past week and said, hey, will you call everybody?
Oh, wow.
And also say you'd like Greg Lopez.
That's very smart.
So he got the ladies to help lay the groundwork for him. So at this point, the folks all feel pretty comfortable, but Harvey is frustrated at this. So he goes over to work out a deal with Jerry Sonnenberg.
Oh, wow.
And there's pictures of the two talking, but we don't know exactly what they say. Then Ted Harvey, in a last minute effort, gets up there and goes, I'm going to withdraw, but I want all of you to go support Jerry Sonnenberg.
Oh,
all 23. So now all Twitter is going, well, it looks like Jerry's got it.
Yeah.
Jerry's going to get it because Ted doesn't think it's fair that a placeholder outside is going to get the nominee. He thinks that it should be one of the 11 candidates.
Wow.
But all Lopez needed was 6.
And how did that work out? He didn't
need all 23.
Yeah.
He just got the 6 he needed.
Wow.
And in the 6th round, with 51 votes, he became the Republican nominee. So he's going to essentially be a congressman with 51 votes. Now, he's still got to go through a primary. He's still got to go through the general election. But this is such a red district. And I'll tell you why Greg Lopez was a safe pick for everybody. Greg just does the work of the conservative movement. Even if it's not sexy, even if it's not flashy, he just shows up. So when my wife and I were kind of frustrated with county commissioners in Elbert County cozying up with developers and doing all these high density multifamily developments in Elbert County. And we would go sit in these county commissioner meetings.
Yeah.
Like a county commissioner meeting and a planning commission meeting. Greg Lopez is a neighbor of mine. Greg was there.
Yeah.
Like just on a random Tuesday night, advocating with us. When I was trying to highlight the problems with metro districts and how they're running up bills on people, guess who was there? Greg Lopez was there. When we would go down to testify at the state capitol on sanctity of life issues, random bills, pro-life bills or anti-abortion bills that we were pushing down there, Greg was there.
That's great.
These ballot initiatives that they're going to run in the state on keeping men out of women's sports, Greg has been leading it. So Greg, it was a super safe pick for everybody because not because you're like, well, I think he's conservative. No, the dude's just been hanging around and helping the conservative movement for years. So people are like, yeah, I trust this guy.
Yeah.
So,
that makes sense. And it's a very smart thing strategically. I love the fact that he reached out to both Boebert and Flora.
Yeah.
That's incredibly smart. But again, it's a little bit of political horse trading. It's like, you can ask your supporters, the people who support you, to support me because I get you what you want and need, which is an open run this fall, which is great. It's very intelligent. And again, I have to admit, I am surprised that they came together in CD4 and did the very strategic, intelligent thing, because many times I feel both parties prefer to go with the statement. You prefer to go with making that value judgment or saying this is who we are and making this broad rather than looking at the functionality of getting in power and making sure that this seat is Republican and get the best choice. It's a great idea. It's nicely done, Greg. I hope he joins us today. Nicely done.
We'll see. We've texted him. We'll see if I think he had a late night. And then Hugo is not like down the street either.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So I'm sure he got home at 2 a.m. And then look, he'll have 6 months in. So he'll likely win the June special election. And between June and January will be the term he serves.
Yeah.
And then whoever wins the general election in November will take over that seat. So you've got 6 months.
It's great.
Here's what you do. Number one, in his position, you establish the constituent services operation of your office. That's smart. That's basic number one. And some of these congressmen don't ever really do that. Madison, was it
Cawthorn or Cawthorn, I think, or whatever.
That guy. Yeah. There was all these stories about how like constituent projects never got transferred over to the next person. So he'll get a chief of staff, he'll get a district director, and he needs to get them installed. But number one, those little projects, and these aren't sexy. These are just, I'm having issues with soybean, whatever, in his district, in the federal government. And so those little projects, or I need to get a passport so I can go to a mission trip or whatever. Those little projects need to continue. That's all he's got to do. Essentially step up, do that. 2, make sure you're connected well with the Republican leadership and you're delivering on the votes you need to. And then number 3, he's got, go make some friends.
Yeah.
You're in DC. You get to do that for 6 months. You're going to be, go over to the Heritage Foundation, go over to, the kind of conservative operation in DC and build some friendships. Have fun for 6 months.
Because you're viewed as someone that has an opportunity in 6 months. You're here, but you are then a free agent in 6 months. This is an opportunity to have, make some friends, but also do some job interviews. Some ideas about, and having that connection that maybe it isn't even something in DC. Maybe it's something that they need to work on back here in Colorado. And he then becomes, that spokesperson or that person that's pushing it that he's so good at. So this is great. This is fun to see. I'm very happy for Greg. I think he is going to be fantastic at this. And it is a wonderful, wonderful choice.
They'll beat him up. They're going to go after some stuff in the past. That's kind of politics, but it was kind of fun to see. It was fun to see that process take place. It does harken me back. And, as a big Lincoln biographer, history nut, it takes me back to that original convention, and you go, that was kind of cool.
Great analogy with Lincoln. Good job.
Yeah,
nicely done.
A lot of other news too. Big fundraiser for Biden yesterday. And if I was Donald Trump, look, he'll say everything he needs to say to dismiss it. Your first call to your campaign manager this morning is we've got to beat that, and you've got to
Yeah.
figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, we got to figure out something, some event, something.
25 million stars.
Yeah.
All that. And look,
he's not going to be able to sell that many Bibles. I'm sorry. It's just, that's not going to work out that way.
There could be a miracle. You
Yes,
never know.
exactly.
On this Good Friday. And we'll get into that. But, and look, he'll go out. The police officer was obviously, the funeral was the right thing for him to do.
Yeah.
He'll dismiss it as the elites giving all this money. But at Trump's core, getting beat financially.
Yeah. That's how he defines himself. He all the time talks about money and wealth, and he talked about how wealthy he is, and that was his brand the first time he ran for president against Hillary. It was the wealth, and I know the system's so good, and I'm the successful businessman, and he hates the fact that he is beaten by money. The other part is the money that I have seen on hand. I think the Democrats are approaching triple the bank account that the Republicans will have on hand. That's scary, because that is a different level of access and messaging. That's a whole nother level they can play in. And that should really, really worry the GOP, the amount of money, because they can spend stupid money where Trump has to be very strategic and effective, and they can just come in and just flood an area if they need to. That's scary.
We'll get into that conversation. Let's check in on the news with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Hey, good morning, guys. 38, mostly cloudy in Denver, expecting highs in the mid-50s today. The 7-10 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story, police investigating an armed burglary and menacing incident this morning that happened on the Hill just across the street from the CU Boulder campus. Police ordered a shelter in place at one point, but we don't know if anyone was injured. According to police, the suspect is described as non-white, 5'10", carried 3 backpacks, wearing a gray hoodie. A United Airlines flight from San Francisco to Paris was diverted early this morning to DIA due to engine problems. It landed safely, and they're still working on trying to get the passengers to Paris. President Biden was joined by former presidents Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, as well as celebrities like, what's his name, Stephen Colbert and Lizzo, for a campaign fundraiser that netted over $25 million in New York. Former President Trump was at a wake for a fallen 31-year-old police officer who was killed earlier this week.
It's such a horrible thing, and it's happening all too often, and we're just not going to let it happen. We just can't. 21 times arrested this thug.
A request from Maryland Governor Wes Moore has been approved by the Biden administration. The state will receive $60 million in emergency relief funds following the collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge. It is early this morning. We have the governor. Here we go. Give me 5 seconds. It's rebooting here.
We need to continue to focus on recovery, because it is our obligation to bring a sense of closure to these families.
Well, the ballot is almost set for Colorado's special election. As you heard Jeff and Bill discuss a few minutes ago, a Republican committee nominated Greg Lopez last night to serve out the rest of former Congressman Ken Buck's seat, who resigned last week. Lopez used to be the mayor of Parker and director of the Small Business Administration. Democrats are scheduled to pick their nominee on Monday. Voters will choose from 2 candidates on June 25th, the same day as the state primary. It's now up to Colorado voters to decide if murder suspects should stay behind bars until trial. A bill to take away their right to bail cleared the final hurdle on Thursday. The Senate approved it less than a year after the state's highest court ruled bond must be granted since there's no death penalty. News brought to you by Lair Fireplace and Patio, Denver's premier source for everything fireplace, patio, and grills, locally owned and operated since 1954, online at lairfireplacepatio.com. It's 32 in Boulder, 34 in Parker, 38 in Denver. The Diamondbacks scored 14 runs in the third inning, breaking a franchise record and ruined the Rockies' opening day. Last night, 16-1. Alabama.
Got a question for you. Do you think
Yes.
the Rockies knew it was opening day?
No.
Or they think it was maybe tomorrow? Maybe it's just the calendar was off or something. Because that's oh my! Did they forget?
It's so Rockies like.
Yes. Did they forget that it's eight innings?
I think so.
Maybe
Billy,
it's not just two. Oh, geez.
Once again, it's all about just the venue.
Yeah.
And the experience. Go late, leave early.
Yep, exactly. Miss the traffic. Yeah, grab the food.
And, fight off a homeless man
that's
or
all
two,
it is.
on the way to
exactly.
the ballpark. Enjoy the deck. Yeah, it's kind of depressing for
really is.
Rockies fans. But plenty of games left, and they can turn it around.
So you're saying there's a shot.
I'm saying that there's still a chance.
You're the best. Thank you.
Alabama and Clemson pull off mild upsets in the Sweet 16 last night. Illinois moves on, and so does UConn. The tournament continues today. CU Lady Buffs take on Caitlin Clark in Iowa tomorrow afternoon. Nuggets and T-Wolves tonight in Lodo. Avs lose a shootout against the Rangers last night.
It is only Friday. Sunday is a coming.
Amen. Good Friday, Easter weekend. Jeff and Bill continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Here's your 710 5-day forecast. It'll be partly cloudy today. Temperature readings upper 50s and lower 60s. We're looking at temperatures tonight in the middle 30s. Highs tomorrow will be upper 50s. Now, Friday afternoon and evening, Friday night, could bring a few scattered areas of rain showers, isolated thunderstorms. Upper 50s Friday, low 30s Friday night. Mild for Saturday and Sunday, reaching the 60s, turning colder late Sunday hours. Meteorologist Don Day, 710 KNUS. Here's your 710 5-day forecast.
Very happy Good Friday to you. In the 9 o'clock hour, Gino Geraci, you know him. He's a pastor and hosts a show on KRKS 94.7, our sister station here. Be joining us to discuss Good Friday and Easter. What does this all mean? So,
and we're going to do confession live on the air. And I'm kidding. I am kidding because neither one of us wants that.
You Catholics.
Yes, I know.
You're always happy to have confession.
Oh, yes. It's,
do you go to confession regularly? I'm not a Catholic, so I've always found that a little interesting.
Well, it depends on what you call regularly. Normally, I seem to, for me, and it's different. I don't go on a regular schedule, but there is a point where, let's just say, the ledger gets full, and we need to have a conversation. And it is that idea, and I understand. And the thing for me that in my Catholic faith, that I understand that in theory, I can even confess my sins and ask forgiveness from the Lord at any point in time during the day, because that's acceptable.
Yep.
But there's something about the ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about going and having to be vocal about it. So regular, no. But when the bag is full, got to empty the bag. Yeah. Although
you guys may confess your sins privately in a little booth. Evangelicals are like, stadiums full of people. Let me tell you about all the things I did wrong.
My best is my oldest, when he went through first confession. It's great because they make a big deal about it. And again, you're a little kid. What do you have to, I mean, there's not a whole lot of, pressure, but you're thinking it's a big deal. And they line up after mass. And my son is the very first one that goes in. He goes in and afterwards steps out, and it is a quiet church. And in his loudest voice, he goes, "Wow, that was easy." I'm like, that's my boy. Great. That was the reaction. I'm like, okay, good. Yeah.
Not too many sins to get off.
No, not at all. Yes. Like, just wait, my boy. Just wait.
Well, in other political news, yesterday, Biden hosted a star-studded New York City fundraiser with Obama and Clinton, BBC reporting. U.S. President Joe Biden hosted a record-breaking election fundraiser in New York City, along with his predecessors, Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. I don't know if you saw the video. It doesn't help to play this video because they were just rising up.
Yeah.
But they came out of the stage. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did. That was smart.
Up.
Yeah. Again, it's just a presentation. And I'm sure, and the other part is that I'm sure Trump's looking at his campaign people going, hey, How come I can't have that stage?
Right, I know.
I want that stage. I want that stage and more smoke and more pyro.
I want,
That's what I
want
need.
the Taylor Swift shoot up out
Exactly.
of the.
Yeah, that's what you need. Yes.
So I did kind of find that funny because Joe Biden is so stiff that when I watched the video, it reminded me of the Disney animatronics presidents thing.
Oh, he is like that. Yes, he absolutely is like that.
He just kind of comes up out of the stage. It's worth watching.
Yeah,
at some point. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, and then as it rotates, then later the stage will rotate a little bit, and then we have Obama rising in them.
Yeah,
it's a robot, but yeah. Oh.
So obviously that kind of passing on the vision that they wanted to send. The visual was this is a continuation of the great legacy of the Democrat Party. That's what they were saying.
Yeah.
From Clinton to Obama to now Biden. The big thing, I mean, it's one thing to put on an event in New York City and have the energy and have all the stars and stuff like that, but it's the money that was raised. $26 million for the campaign, a record for a single political event.
Yeah.
This gives the president a significant cash advantage over Donald Trump, and he can spend more on advertising in key states. So does it matter as much money-wise in the presidential? Not as much as maybe a congressional race. Like if there's a big cash advantage in a congressional race, it's going to absolutely benefit the person who has that, because the presidential has a natural kind of high name ID, high visibility already, right?
Yeah.
These guys are both going to have near 100% name ID when they go into the vote.
And they also can get earned media much easier than anybody else at any other level. Much easier. Yeah.
But does it matter? It absolutely matters. So money is the gasoline that drives the car of a campaign.
Now explain to us why, because you've been on that side of the campaign that many of us have not.
Yeah.
Why is the dollar figure so important? What does it allow you to do or constrain you?
Yeah. So as I said, it's the gasoline that drives the car. The car doesn't go anywhere without it. Right.
Yeah.
So without
Not
gas,
my car and the money.
It's just kind of
and my kids keep taking. Never mind. I'm going somewhere else. But okay, go ahead.
So you've got to get on television. You've got to pay canvassers. Yeah. You've got to host events and rallies. When Romney hosted a big rally at Red Rocks, it was a donated space. Yeah. They had to pay for it. They brought in Kid Rock. That cost money. And then all the advertising. So this is going to be a great year if you're Channel 9, Channel 7, Channel 4. If you're Salem, if you're anybody who's going to require on political advertising, it's a good year.
It is a good year. Now, we will say that the political advertising sits in a different category.
Yes.
And the rule says that you have to charge the lowest billable rate over the previous 12 months. So the previous cycle. So you do get an influx of cash, but you are selling those spots at the lowest it is for that rate. Not your lowest ever. Just, it's a 6:00 p.m. spot on Channel 9. What have they sold it for at the lowest rate in the previous 12 months? That's what you pay for political. So that's how it works. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's an important detail a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, it's really important.
They can't, Channel 7, for instance, can't go to the Trump campaign and charge them 3 times more than they would the Biden campaign.
Exactly.
It's not fair.
And it's also, they do that on lowest billable rate in the last 12 months because then it gains more access. The theory is it allows people with lower cash more access, and it's offset by the influx of political ads. So you assume that the greater supply will balance out the lower spot rate. That's the theory behind it. Okay, go ahead.
And in Colorado, you're going to probably experience a different level than you have in years past, because we're not really a purple state anymore. We're a blue state.
Yeah.
So neither Biden nor Trump are going to spend much money here. And in fact, I don't think Trump is even going to come to Colorado.
No, not at all. I think we'll see some PAC money and we'll see some issue money. But I think issues, but not. I don't think we'll see a lot of
and they're going to focus on CD8. That's where most of the money. Gabe Evans, Yadira Caraveo, that race, which was very close, very narrow congressional race up in northern Denver, that will receive a lot of money.
3 as well. Where Lauren's leading. I think that'll get some play, but I think it'll be played there. I think if you're in that community, you're going to be inundated with certain types of ads, but not necessarily the state.
And you can target those districts now with cable buys. It's a lot different. It's not big broadcasts like you saw. So you probably won't see a ton, but this means a lot of money. But here, Trump's got to deal with this. And this morning, he's going to wake up and deal with this headline. And there's a lot of headlines that Trump can ignore and would ignore. This one he won't ignore because of his personality.
Yeah, I don't think he can.
Getting beat financially is not something he can
No.
easily shrug off.
Yeah, he'll be very angry about it. And he's been beat by campaign fundraising numbers for the last few months. So there's been a trend. And I'm curious to see if the Biden camp will actually push that. I saw something yesterday, and it was a retweet from someone, because I don't follow Biden, or I don't see that stuff enough. I wait for the retweets, and there's a reason for that. But they ran kind of a pseudo Donald Trump schedule. They said, hey, Biden's going here today and doing this big fundraiser, and Trump's doing, and it basically just was a schedule of nothing. Yeah. And so they're poking fun at him that way. But I was kind of like, I think it'll hurt more if they go after the number today.
Now, Trump did go to the funeral of the police officer that was killed by a guy that's been deported. What was it, 21 times or something like that? Yeah. Which was good and honorable of the president to do that and to focus on those issues. And that provided a good alternative to what happened yesterday. And I'm glad Trump did. And I think it's a clear contrast to what the Democrats were doing yesterday. Yeah. And it's a fair critique, right? You guys are hosting a party, you know, record fundraising. You're the elites. You're all this. You're ignoring what's happening on the ground. I'm going to spend my time with the people and those that are suffering under your policies. Yeah. That was a fair critique.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. And it's a great picture. It's a great contrast. You're right. Yeah. Absolutely right. 110%.
But I don't think Trump also woke up this morning feeling super good about the 26 million being raised by his opponent.
Yeah. So. I'm not sure that he woke up and he'd wake up. And if he could have changed positions and gone, Biden goes to the funeral and I get the extra cash, I think he would have chosen the cash. Yeah. I mean, again, it was smart for him to go to the funeral, but I think he would have chosen the cash if given the possibility.
We'd love to get your calls and texts on this 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971. Two things we've been talking about this morning. Greg Lopez getting CD4 Republican nomination for the special election that'll be taking place June 25th. It was a big night last night. If you missed my rundown, you can go back and listen to that on 710 KNUS. It was absolutely a horse race. Is Greg the right guy? Are you excited for Greg to fill that role, to be a placeholder from June until January for that office? And who would you support in CD4? He's not going to be on the primary ballot for Republicans, which is going to be on the same day. I know it's confusing. It's going to be, you're going to get two ballots, one for a special election, one for a Republican primary. He won't be on the Republican primary ballot. Who would you like to pick for that? And then also the Joe Biden fundraiser, Trump going to the slain police officer's funeral. Was that a better move from him? And is he going to face a serious money problem? Does it matter that Joe Biden's going to have more money going into this presidential race than Donald Trump? Or do you think that the decision on the ground, the people on the ground know that there are so many problems, we've got to replace Joe Biden and the money doesn't matter so much? Give us a call, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971, or text us on the 710 KNUS app. We'll get your calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710, KNUS.
At this hour in Brussels, I'm Ishan Garg, and here are the top stories we are following. The International Court of Justice has ordered Israel to allow humanitarian aid to flow into Gaza unhindered in order to avoid thousands starving to death in the enclave. UN agencies warned that complete famine could hit Gaza within weeks. Israel said on Monday that it would no longer follow UN RWA from operating in northern Gaza and blamed Hamas for the humanitarian crisis on the ground and for starting this war. The court says Israel has 30 days to show it has complied with the order. The U.S. government has approved an initial $60 million in emergency funds for the state of Maryland to clear debris and start rebuilding the Francis Scott Key Bridge, which was destroyed by a large container ship. Federal officials have reportedly said that the project could cost as much as $2 billion. Ira Spitzer reports.
The Department of Transportation called the $60 million a down payment toward initial costs and said that additional emergency relief program funding will be made available. President Biden has promised that the federal government will cover the entire cost of rebuilding the Baltimore Bridge, but that idea has already faced some opposition from fiscal conservatives in Congress.
And that's what you need to know at this hour. I'm Ishan Garg in Brussels on Salem News Channel.
Some good text messages coming in. We're having a conversation about the $26 million record fundraising night that Joe Biden had. Donald Trump attending the funeral of the slain officer. Just a contrast in many ways yesterday, and in kind of the view of who's supporting these candidates, right? Joe Biden getting the support of the elites in New York City, and Donald Trump saying, no, I'm a man of the people, walking among them, but having a financial difference as well. And look, I appreciate what Donald Trump did yesterday. I'm glad he did that, but I know it didn't sit easy with him that his opponent had that big of a night fundraising. Joan pointing out, though, that money didn't seem to matter too much when Trump beat Hillary in 2016, or as much, is critical.
Yeah. And I think there's some assumptions there that Hillary made. And again, I think that for someone of your ilk that is really into that campaign and that strategy, I would assume that the Hillary campaign would be one of those that would be studied for decades in the future, because in my opinion, it is the greatest example of a candidate spiking the football on the 5-yard line and thinking they scored a touchdown. It is the great, because she gave up that final 3-4 weeks. She gave up. She wasn't doing anything. She wasn't going to the places that had the potential to flip. She was already decorating the Oval Office. She was already assembling the staff. Yeah, she thought the thing was over, and that's a huge lesson to everybody. I think it'll be studied for years.
Well, and you end up in campaigns in very narrow. You're almost like a horse with blinders on. And I'll give you a few examples of that. One was the Nixon campaign. When Nixon won, there's this famous quote from, I think it was the editors of the Washington Post or New York Times, that said they didn't know a single person that voted for Nixon. How did this happen?
Yeah.
And I remember in 2012, when we did the Romney rally at Red Rocks 4 days before, or a week before the election, and we had to turn 4,000 people away because it was too full. And it took 3 hours to even get up there and to get in. And it was huge.
Yeah.
You had Kid Rock opening, and we thought we had all the momentum. We never saw a single Obama yard sign anywhere. We thought we had surely locked this up. They called that presidential race even before the polls closed in Colorado.
They did.
It was like watching a blue wave just come through, and you're like, how did that happen?
How did it? Yeah, I think in that one, I think the pot legalization was a real big,
was helpful,
because I think what it did is it pulled in the unusual voter, or the not regular voter, people that aren't being touched in the polls. And I think, and just on a side note, I think that's the problem we have in polls today, is that we have people that are not regular cyclical voters, and they come in and out, and it's nearly impossible to, one, find them, but also predict that in the future. So while polls, I think, are a good snapshot and over a long term a good indicator, but does any singular poll tell the truth? No, none the least. And I think that's part of it.
Did the vice president attend the New York event? I don't think so. I'm not sure if they did, but
I would assume they did, but I don't know. I didn't see anything about it, but I would assume it's a big fundraiser. Why wouldn't she want to, shake hands with all the people that she might need money for if she's going to try to run again? Or I don't know.
I don't think it changed anybody's votes.
No.
I think what it did was it strengthened Democrats, because you had a reminder of Clinton, Obama, that legacy. This is what we're doing. This is what a Democrat White House looks like, right? So everybody that was there. But I will get into this in a second, because it wasn't all roses and fireworks and celebration.
Oh, excellent.
For them.
Oh, good.
And so I think it strengthened Democrat voters. They're happy, right? The big thing is the cash advantage. That's where you go, as a Republican, I just don't like to be losing in any situation. And if we're losing the money, is it the end of the world? No, it's not the end of the world. Can Trump still win? Absolutely. Did Trump do the right thing by going to the slain police officer's funeral? 100% he did. But I think I know Donald Trump, and I know where I would stand as a campaign manager. And that money figure gets you in the morning, and you go, we got to come up with an alternative for it. And if it's Bibles, it's Bibles. I'm not opposed to that, but it wasn't great. But it wasn't all roses for Biden yesterday. Let's see if I can find the Biden protests. And I think we bleeped out some of the words, Bill.
Well, I only heard one. I mean, I should have.
I think it was one. Yeah, I think it was right at the beginning.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that was actually, but it sounded close enough to a swear word. I did delete it, but I'm not sure that was exactly what the person was saying. But if not, you'll have a new show Monday.
So his event, Biden's event yesterday, was interrupted numerous times with Palestinian protesters.
There was an insurrection.
Shame on you, Joe Biden! Shame on you! Shame
That's
on
right.
you! You are genocide of Palestine, and no amount of full concern that you do will change the billions that you are doing! You did what on your head? Talk about the
So protesters covering and that event, interrupting that event of Biden, that's going to continue to be I think a pretty contentious issue for his presidential campaign to deal with. They're not going away.
No.
I mean, if you have that big of a star-studded event and it's being interrupted, his town halls are going to be interrupted. His rallies are going to be interrupted. Maybe they just keep him in the basement like they did in 2020. I don't know, but that those Palestinian protesters are going to continue to be a big issue for him.
This is just a theory. I have a theory that Biden will actually be campaigning a lot more than he did in 2020. And the only reason that I have that theory is because Donald Trump can't. I think that the Biden campaign will try to take advantage of the legal constraints and other things just based on schedule that are going to be a problem for Trump. And I think they're going to lean into that. Say, look, this guy's doing this so much in court, which for Republicans will reinforce the narrative that Biden is doing this on purpose. And for people that are on the left, it's going to reinforce, this is a criminal running for president. So it's going to reinforce the narrative for both sides. The other one I'm real curious about the protesters are how sincere they are in their beliefs. And what I mean by that is, are you sincere in those beliefs enough to either not vote for Biden or choose a third-party candidate, knowing that has the likelihood of getting Trump into office, who is going to do things that you view as much worse? If it is that important to you, okay, but understand the unintended consequences. If you want to stand on that precipice and say, this is the line that I'm going to draw, you're free to do that. Go right ahead. But guess what? If that ends up in a Trump presidency, you don't get to bitch about it. You get to shut up.
Yeah.
Because you're part of the reason that happened. Because again, much like my critique of the Freedom Caucus and what they do inside of Congress, where the purity is the enemy of the good. And I see that in the protesters as well. Because that we aren't pure enough, that's enemy of the good. And in both cases, fine. Get what you want. There are a lot of unintended consequences if you're going to stay on that purity and deal with it. That's it's your choice, but you also get to have those consequences afterwards.
Good text message here from 5311 Nebraska, going back to what we were talking about on the money side. Look, if Trump's donations are $5 and $10 donations, and he may not have the same money that the Democrats are bringing in. Remember that a lot of that money is big dollar donors. And so it doesn't necessarily reflect the energy on the ground, because you have, one person that can write $1 million check versus a smaller number of people, granted, or a bigger number of people that do a smaller single donation, like a $5 or $10. It's a smaller amount as a pot, but it's more people.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, I've heard this a lot in the last 24 hours. Just the idea of, it's the elites giving to Biden and Trump has the grassroots supporters. After the State of the Union, I want to say close to 50%, if not just over, of the donations after that were $10, $20, $30 donations. They trumpeted the fact that it was a significant amount. It was, and I want to say it was more than half. I'm not sure, but I'm certain that it was at least 40% plus of the donations.
Small dollar donors.
Were small dollar donations, because they played that. And the only reason I remember that, and I'm uncertain on the exact number, only because one of Biden's spokespeople went out there and said it, and they said it wrong. They said it that Biden's getting all these donations from 510 as if all of the donations are that, and it isn't. Because I was curious, I'm like, I don't think that's right, and I went back and looked, but I didn't commit that much to memory. But yeah, I know that post the State of the Union, that they saw a lot of influx of small dollar donations, and I want to say that over the course of the campaign, it's over 35 to 40% is what they're seeing in that number. But you need both. Because it's really nice to get that big fat check too. That really multi-million-dollar check helps so much.
That's exactly right. Is it better that Donald Trump was at this funeral for the slain police officer yesterday? Does that send a stronger message that Donald Trump is connected with the real problems that Americans are facing, while Democrats were out hosting this big $20 million shindig at Radio City Music Center with all of these stars and all that stuff? What did that mean to you? Or do you just kind of shrug and go, wow, these are just campaign events? It doesn't really affect my life. I'd like to hear from you. 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971. Text us on the 710 KNUS app. Up next, You Choose the News with Bill Thorpe. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
It's a crowd favorite. Let's do You Choose the News, Bill.
Yes, and it is the Friday edition. Time for all of us losers. Yet another shot at glory.
Man, you are one pathetic loser.
Loser!
Let's go. Loser! You're a loser!
The Losers Club. Bunch of losers.
You're such a loser. You made me feel like a loser!
She's a loser.
You are such a loser.
Loser.
Alrighty, yet again, these are stories that were not deemed worthy of being read to you, being shared for whatever reason. But they have a second chance at glory today on You Choose the News. Gentlemen, Jeff and Blake Olsen from the newsroom, here are your headlines this morning. Police department hammered by big business. Headline number 2, perfect example of American politics. Headline number 3, a scary reminder of who is in charge. And the one wild card this week, where did all this money come from? All right, Mr. Hunt, choose wisely.
Let's do a scary reminder.
Yes, a scary reminder of exactly who is in charge. On Monday, the Tennessee Senate passed a bill prohibiting the intentional injection, release, dispersion by any means of chemicals in the air. Yes, Representative Monty Fritz and Senator Steve Sutherland, both Republicans, have proposed bills that will ban chemtrails in the state. So far, there's no real documentation or proof of the government releasing any sort of chemicals or anything into the climate on a large-scale basis in order to influence the weather and change things that we are doing. However, that did not stop these intrepid young representatives and senators to try to pass a bill against something that doesn't exist. Yeah, and you wonder why we can't have nice things. Right? I know. You wonder why we don't always, it's the same thing with the safe injection side.
Under Biden's fourth term, when the government conspires for the chemtrails, will be prevented.
Well prevented. Next, we got to work on the brain implant chip things. All righty, sir. Next choice. Police department hammered by big biz. Perfect example of American politics. Or where did all this money come from?
Where did all the money come from?
Yes, where did all this money come from? South Carolina is saying, is this your money? They've collected
$1 billion.
They've collected $1.8 billion in a bank account over the past decade, but they have no idea where it came from. The state accountants can't figure out where this cash came from. They're searching and searching high and low, and the South Carolinian government say, no idea. Maybe it's yours. Maybe we found it in the couch. What scares me most about this is the fact that they didn't know. This tells you how good they are at the accounting in the first place. If they can misplace over $1 billion.
I guarantee you there'll be an enterprising lawmaker that will come up with some type of law that says after 2 more years, that money belongs to us.
Exactly. And we're going to get to keep it rather than, because it would be silly to assume that they took it from the taxpayers in South Carolina
and then they'll go out there and trumpet how great they are at budgeting.
Exactly.
They'll be like, we've had a surplus
look
this
at
year.
this. Yeah, just because we forgot how to do math. I talk about failing upwards. I want to forget about something and come back with $1 billion. How does that happen? All righty. Blake Olson from the news department joining us for our final choice. Police department hammered by big biz or perfect example of American politics. Your choice, sir.
Oh, let's go with the American politics.
Yes, this is a perfect example of American politics. Here we are going to be meeting a couple. It's wonderful. They live in Fort Myers, Florida, and they have been dating for 25 years. And recently, though, they decided to break up. Unfortunately, it is because of politics. Well, that and the strangulation. Yeah, that kind of was a hiccup in the relationship as well. What happened was the 70-year-old man and his younger girlfriend, who's in her 60s, spent the entire day arguing about politics. He's a Republican. She's a Democrat. Near the end of the day, he had had enough, and he needed to choke out. I won't say the word. But he decided to go kinetic, grabbed her around the throat, and started to choke. And so then they got a call. Unfortunately, though, this wasn't the first time. 10 days ago, said Republican also took out a knife and decided to threaten his neighbor over similar disagreements. If that is not a perfect encapsulation of American politics, I don't know what is. That eventually we're going to try to choke each other. All right.
Fort Myers.
Yep. Thanks, Blake, for playing along. That is the end of You Choose the News. Back to you, sir.
Did you see this interview on The View?
Oh, yeah.
Can we ever get to a colorblind society? A good debate took place on The View. We'll be covering that. You've been listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710, KNUS.
Good Friday morning to you. It's a good Friday morning to you. You've tuned into the Jeff and Bill Show on 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe.
Good morning.
Bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, center, and crazy. It's a beautiful day in Denver. We're gearing up for another hour of engaging discussions, critical analysis, and most importantly, your phone calls, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. So grab your coffee, Denver. Let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. In the past hour, we were discussing President Trump's day yesterday, attending the wake of New York police officer Jonathan Diller, who was shot just below his bulletproof vest, 31 years old, spent time with the family yesterday, investing in the community, in a community that's dealing with these crime issues. Whereas the evening was for Joe Biden included a big event at Rockefeller Center with Barack Obama, Bill Clinton. Star-studded event, raised $26 million. Are the Democrats out of touch? Donald Trump called them the Three Stooges last night as they kind of came up out of the floor. But it was a big night for Democrats. A record-breaking $26 million raised for a single event. And it wasn't all roses. It wasn't all perfect for them. A lot of their event was interrupted by protesters, particularly around Gaza. So Democrat Party dealing with that. It's an election year. It's going to be a wild ride all the way to the end. What did you think of that? I'd love to hear 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971.
Yeah, I would wonder
text
if
us
you're
on the
worried.
710 KNUS
Yeah.
app.
Are you worried that the Democrats are going to have too much money? Because you're getting to a point where if the Democrats can spend $3 for every $1 the Republicans can spend, that can make a difference if they spend it correctly. That can absolutely make a difference in the election.
Yep. Diller, the police officer who they did the mass for yesterday, was the father of a 1-year-old boy killed Monday during a routine traffic stop in Queens. The guy who allegedly shot the police officer had been arrested 20 times previously. So it is a fascinating contrast right now. Who has the energy? Who has the momentum? Who's going to win? And we're going to be tracking all of it between now and November. But that was a fascinating day yesterday, the contrast taking place. And then we also talked about Greg Lopez getting the Republican nomination for the special election in Congressional District 4. It was a horse race all night long, went till about 10:30. And he pulled off what is called the Lincoln strategy from the 1860 convention. He was not everybody's first pick. This is what Lincoln did as well. Not everybody's first pick in a contentious kind of primary or special election, but he was everybody's comfortable second pick. And in some cases, that can work out. In the first ballot, Greg Lopez was at third, but as the candidates started to drop out and didn't necessarily want one of their primary opponents to get the nomination, Greg Lopez, who promised to not run in November, to simply be a placeholder, he became the safe pick for everybody else, and he slowly rose to the top, winning in the sixth ballot. So Greg Lopez will become the Republican nominee for the special election, which will take place in June for Ken Buck's seat. Greg Lopez was formerly with the Small Business Administration here in Colorado, and prior to that, the mayor of Parker, and a kind of conservative activist on the ground in lots of different ways. So that's why people felt comfortable with him.
Yeah, and if you missed the process, Jeff does a wonderful job walking you through it. It will sound as if you were there and listening to what was happening, because he takes you round by round. Last hour, listen to the podcast. It'll be up in a couple seconds. And he does a wonderful job explaining how Greg goes from third to first and how a last-ditch effort missed by that much. That last-ditch effort was from Ted Harvey to broker a deal with Jerry Sonnenberg to have his support going into the final ballot. And all Greg Lopez needed was 5 votes from Ted Harvey's little group
and he got 6, and that's how it came down to. So Greg Lopez will become a congressman initially with only 51 votes, which will be fascinating to see what his leadership's going to look like for 6 months.
Yeah. And I love the way you branded it as Greg pulled off a Lincoln.
Yeah.
That is very, very intelligent, very smart, very insightful.
1860 convention. So if you go back to that convention, Abraham Lincoln was not everybody's top pick, but there was a passionate debate between Seward, Chase, and Bates, and they divided the convention so much that nobody could get the nomination. So all these first pick top guys couldn't get it. So they had to go to somebody at the second round, and it was Abraham Lincoln, who people had known, even though he was only just a congressman. That was it. But they knew him through the Lincoln-Douglas debates.
Yeah. So it was very smart. And he was like, hey, you guys can't settle on this candidate. I can be the one safe where you're not making any enemies.
Yes.
And that was the smartest thing that Greg did. He came in and said, no, you're not going to offend either your friends or even people you may disagree with because you're jumping ship or you're choosing somebody they dislike. So you choose me. Yeah. He was beige wallpaper. Yeah. And it was great. And again, but the thing is that beige wallpaper works. Yeah. Beige wallpaper's there for a reason. And the fact that he sold himself as, no, I'm going to do constituent services, and then I'm going to just be a solid vote that we need right now in the House. That's a winning message. It's a winning message right now.
And
nicely done, Greg.
The 11-person primary will continue on, and all that fighting between Lauren Boebert and Deborah Flora and Jerry Sonnenberg and Ted Harvey and Mike Lynch and Richard Holtorf and everybody else in that race will continue.
Yeah. I think, in my opinion, it keeps that primary race a little more pure. Yeah. While I understand that any of those candidates would have loved to have the benefit of even a 6-month incumbency, I still think that this choice ends up leaving that primary much more pure. So it's a good idea.
Yep. All right. Let's check in on the news with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Good morning. Should all politicians be in for 6 months? I think that'd be great.
That would be great.
Right? Let's try that.
Yeah.
38 and partly cloudy in Denver, expecting highs in the mid 50s today. The 7-10 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story: a United Airlines flight from San Francisco to Paris was diverted to DIA early this morning due to engine problems. It landed safely, and they're still trying to get those passengers to Paris for food and fun. In Boulder on the Hill this morning, just west of campus, police investigating an armed burglary. At one point, the shelter in place was issued for the area. The suspect is 5'10", non-white, and carrying 3 backpacks, wearing a gray hoodie. It happened near some campus housing. We don't know if anyone was injured. Colorado voters will now decide if murder suspects stay behind bars until trial. A bill to take away their right to bail cleared the final Senate hurdle on Thursday. Democratic Senator Rhonda Fields.
If you have the resources to come up with the 3 million, 100 million, whatever it is, people who have the means can bond out.
The measure will appear on the November ballot. Former Presidents Obama, Clinton teamed up with President Biden and celebrities like Lizzo in a huge fundraiser last night. They netted over $25 million. The other Lizzo, Cheney, was busy running her soup cooler, ripping former President Trump and conservatives last night.
And look, I think the Republican Party leadership itself had to make a choice. Many times they were faced with a choice between, doing what was right, between furthering the democracy and the Constitution, or embracing Donald Trump, and they chose Donald Trump.
Letitia James needs
on that real quick.
Yeah, go ahead. That's fun stuff.
All right. So look, Liz Cheney can't get elected right now. She can't get elected among Republicans. She can't get elected among Democrats. She's in no man's land. Yes. And the only reason she's going to be on media is because she bashes Trump and the media hates Trump. That's exactly that's just a weird position to be in. I would think as a career where you're like, that's what I do now. I have one job that the media trots me out. to just bash bash Donald Trump, and there's no substance there. You're not a leadership. You're not an elected official. Neither party wants you. You're a tool.
Yes. Letitia James needs to investigate her for fraud because whatever she makes to speak is far too much. And I think she's still talking right now. I mean, I tried to listen to 45 minutes of it. Just brutal. And to think I used to drive through Wyoming and see those huge billboards. There were 2 or 3 with Cheney. Oh man, that was rough. All right. Trump was at a wake Thursday honoring a fallen 31-year-old Queens police officer.
It's such a horrible thing, and it's happening all too often, and we're just not going to let it happen. We just can't. 21 times arrested this thug.
A request from Maryland Governor Wes Moore for $60 million in emergency relief following the bridge collapse has been approved.
This work will not take hours. This work will not take days. This work will not just take weeks. We have a very long road ahead of us. We understand that, and we're prepared.
And Greg Lopez, nominated last night to serve out the rest of Ken Buck's seat in CD4. Lopez steps up for the Republicans as Buck fails to fulfill his responsibilities. 32 in Northland, 29 in Castle Pines, and 38 in Denver. DU with a 2-1 victory over UMass last night in the first round of the Frozen Four. Congratulations to them. The Avs lose in a shootout against the Rangers last night. The Diamondbacks scored 14 runs in the third inning, breaking a franchise record and ruined the Rockies' opening day last night, 16-1. Alabama and Clemson pull off mild upsets in the Sweet 16 last night. Illinois moves on, and so does UConn. The tournament continues today. CU Lady Buffs take on Caitlin Clark in Iowa tomorrow afternoon. Nuggets and T-Wolves tonight in Lodo.
Oh, it's Friday, but Sunday's coming.
One of my favorites. Good Friday. Great. Jeff and Bill continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Here's your 710 5-day forecast. It'll be partly cloudy today. Temperature readings upper 50s and lower 60s. We're looking at temperatures tonight in the middle 30s. Highs tomorrow will be upper 50s. Now, Friday afternoon and evening, Friday night, could bring a few scattered areas of rain showers, isolated thunderstorms. Upper 50s Friday, low 30s Friday night, mild for Saturday and Sunday, reaching the 60s, turning colder. Late Sunday, Sunday night, and Monday with a chance of showers. Meteorologist Don Day, 710 KNUS.
Saw this fascinating conversation on The View that took place the other day. I know what you're saying. The View. There's never a fascinating conversation.
Was your TV
what
broken?
What are you talking about?
The remote ran out of batteries?
They just scream at conservatives, and that's a fair critique. They do. But this is something I've been thinking just a lot about since the George Floyd incident, the BLM, and the riots that all took place.
Yeah.
Is what happened to the way I was trained, and I was publicly educated, public school educated, Cherry Creek School District, West Middle School, Cherry Creek High School. And everything I grew up being learning about race relations was the Martin Luther King vision, right? We are going to move past the atrocities of the past. They were horrible. We're not going to dismiss what happened with slavery and Jim Crow and all that stuff. We want to get to a place of judging somebody by the content of their character, or even we want to be blind to someone's skin color, right? We want to look past that. So I remember being a young boy going, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to be a better generation. And then it seemed to flip where being colorblind, as when it comes to seeing somebody's race, was a bad thing. And there was this push that came that if we're not willing to acknowledge somebody's race, we're not willing to acknowledge the disparities in anything based upon race, then we're not helping advance anti-racism. So then I read Abraham Kendi's books, and I was like, okay, I want to try to understand all this stuff. And this conversation took place on The View around being a colorblind society, where I went, man, these guys are tapping into this issue.
It was a really interesting conversation.
And it was an interesting conversation. So I wanted to have this.
I appreciate it.
Listen to the clips of this discussion, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. 303-696-1971. This is the question I've had through all of this. Anti-racism, Abraham Kendi, BLM. Where are we going? What's the end point? What's the North Star that we're trying to achieve? And how do we know if we're going in the right direction?
Ooh, that's a good question.
How do we know that things are better?
Yeah.
Because that's what we want. And a lot of this I'm motivated for, guys, is I'm motivated by my faith.
Yeah.
Where the Bible says that there is no Greek or Jew, slave or free. We're all one in Jesus Christ. And on this Good Friday, I kind of felt like this was appropriate to
it's
bring
great.
up.
And I feel that way too, that I come to this with the heart of Christ, that this is something that we should get beyond because it is about the content of the person and what they're going through that you have to deal with. You don't want to make the prejudgment. I mean, I'll go back to the story of the Good Samaritan. That's a story about prejudice.
Right.
So that idea too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And what struck me in this first clip was the generational difference. Okay. I've seen this too on the feminism side of things. So there's guys that I love, like Michael Knowles, folks, Daily Wire, that are my generation, who's like, feminism was horrific on our culture. And what the critique is what's called like second or third wave feminism, that like you even heard on The View a few days ago, like all men are bad, that type of thing. And so we need to reject feminism in its entirety. And I'm kind of like, well, I grew up with a mom who was entering the radio business when it was not at all friendly to women. And I've heard these stories. And so this like outright rejection of all things feminism that you kind of see among the right, I'm kind of like, what about the history of like, just there was like a real, like, this is real, that women were treated very poorly by men in power in the 50s and 60s. Like, and that fight for equal treatment, that's not something to be ignored. And you can kind of see this among younger conservatives on the race thing too, where it's like, well, yeah, we're going to kind of, we're not really going to talk about Jim Crow, or we're not really going to talk about what happened in slavery and stuff like no. That was really bad. In fact, the whole formation of the Republican Party was addressing this issue. Now, do I think it's been co-opted by race hustlers and people that push kind of a Marxist racism? Absolutely. Absolutely. Where it's like, we're going to continue these power dynamics and we're never really going to move past it. So that's why this conversation was so important. Listen to the author of this book about a colorblind society, who's a young black man. He's an independent young black man, versus Whoopi Goldberg. Obviously, you know, she's a black woman, but she's a little bit older. So listen to the generational discussion that takes place here.
First question that I should ask you to do is explain to folks what you mean by this. Arguments for a colorblind America. What do you mean when you say that?
So a lot of people equate colorblindness to I don't see race, or to pretending not to see race. I think that's a big mistake. We all see race, right? And we're all capable of being racially biased. So we should all be self-aware to that possibility. My argument is not for that. My argument is that we should try our very best to treat people without regard to race, both in our personal lives and our public policy.
Of course.
And the reason I wrote this book, thank you. The reason I wrote this book is because in the past 10 years, it has become very popular to, in the name of anti-racism, teach a kind of philosophy to our children and in general that says your race is everything, right? And I think that is the wrong way to fight racism. And that's why I wrote this book at this time.
I'm sorry, baby. Yeah. Can I just point out that there is a reason for that? You know, when I went to school, getting any information about anyone's race was not taught. No history. There was no Black history. None of those things were taught. And here in America,
She's not wrong
100 years ago when I was young,
She's not wrong.
that's how people saw you. That's how they judged you. So I think I don't want to say it's your youth, but I think you have a point, but I think you have to also take into consideration what people have lived through in order to understand why there has been such a pointing of very specific racial things, like women couldn't get into colleges. If you were a Black person, there were a lot of colleges wouldn't accept you, trying to equal the playing field. I think that's what a lot of folks have been trying to do. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I think that's your experience, and that's valid. You know, as a counterpoint, when I was in 5th grade, we all watched Roots together.
Yeah.
In public school.
Yeah.
So these are different experiences. I think it's also different generations. It's different parts of the country, right? We have very different cultures all living together in one country. So I'm not going to deny that. But I think I view this notion of a colorblind society similar to the idea of a peaceful society, which is to say it's an ideal, it's a North Star. And the point is not that we're ever going to get there. We're not going to touch it, but we have to know when we're going forward and when we're going backwards. And we're going backwards when we're doing woke kindergarten in San Francisco.
So that's Coleman Hughes. He's an American writer and podcast host. He's a fellow at the Manhattan Institute for Policy Research, and he wrote a book called The End of Race Politics: Arguments for a Colorblind America. So what was interesting about that dynamic right there is I appreciated that Whoopi was willing to agree to the idea that we should move in a kind of race colorblind America.
And you're right about the generational differences there. That was really interesting to see, because Whoopi's response was, well, you don't understand or don't have a perspective of what we've been through.
Yeah.
And I can understand and empathize with that older generation, how difficult that is, how hard that is, because what they view it as, that they were told that they were lesser Americans. They were told that they weren't equal citizens. And so I can see the anger, I can see the frustration, and I can see why I can see why they get to the point of even wanting reparations. I can see why, because, I mean, this is a weird analogy and it's not exactly perfect, but it's the same thing that I hear on the phone lines and on the texts about this political persecution that is perceived of Trump. That because Biden has weaponized the Department of Justice, the system's rigged, and the only thing that we can do is we need revenge. We have to do the same thing to them they're doing to us. Only then will they understand it, and only then will the ledger be balanced. And I hear that the same way with some of the anti-racist. I hear that only when the white man feels the same subjugation and the same persecution and the same taking of wealth, only then will they understand, and only then will we say it's equal. And I think both theories are flawed.
Interesting. So that's the start of this conversation over, can we actually achieve a colorblind society? Now, Whoopi and Coleman have a generally nice conversation. A little bit later, Sonny Hostin engages in just straight ad hominem attacks because he's a conservative, or at least an independent thinker on this stuff.
And I don't know if we have this in the clip, but in the conversation, I might have edited out, but there's something that Sonny does in the conversation that I look at and go, that was bad form. Not the ad hominem attacks per se, but it's the, oh yeah, I know more than you, I have more than you thing. And I run into that, and I try myself in conversations to prevent against that. And the comment that she makes is, well, I know Dr. King's daughter.
Exactly.
Because I know her and she's a friend, my opinion means more and has more weight. That is a logical fallacy, but she's trying to establish that. And I so full-heartedly disagree with her taking that tactic. I also disagree with questions, but that I thought was really bad.
We're going to get to these clips in just a second. So Coleman Hughes, going back to that conversation about generational, and I took us on a little bit of a side tangent there. I apologize, but he's born in 1996.
I know.
I mean, this is even after I spent yesterday. I watched documentaries.
His hair, there were no wrinkles. I was not a fan. Not a fan. I tease, but yeah.
born in 1996. His experience of the world was totally different. He was born 4 years after the LA riots, which I watched on a whole documentary yesterday on that one, in the racial frustration over that, which was, yes, it was white, black, but it was also white, black, Korean, Hispanic.
Oh, yeah.
It was everybody.
Oh, yeah.
It was that one.
That functionality was more about economics than it was about race, but everybody focused on the race, and that it wasn't. That was about economics. Yeah.
Fascinating. So this guy grows up, 2 generations different than Whoopi, and says, I don't want to continue to have these fights. I want to move past it. And in fact, I think the anti-racism, the Abraham Kindys, those types of folks are taking us back.
Yeah.
That's his whole thesis here, is that we've engaged in this kind of reverse racism, which he calls neo-racism, that needs to be addressed. And I want to move towards a colorblind society. His argument, though, is that our focus shouldn't be so much on race as it is class, because when you get into the racial disparity issue, there's a chunk of people that you totally ignore, which is poor white people.
Yep. And that fosters more anger and frustration in that group because they feel favoritism towards another group because of the color of their skin.
Yes.
And their ethnicity.
Yep.
So in some ways, it perpetuates the anger and hatred that it is trying to correct.
Yes.
So it is an imperfect and incorrect solution. Absolutely.
So this is his recommendation on what we should be focusing in on.
No, but
wait, because I want to get to the part of the book. You believe that public policies that address socioeconomic differences would be better at benefiting disadvantaged groups, and that race-based policies often hurt the very people they're trying to help. What are some examples of policies that would be better at reducing racial disparities?
So my overall argument is that class, socioeconomics, is a better proxy for disadvantage. We all want to help the disadvantaged. And the question is, how do we identify them, right? The default right now in a lot of areas of policy is to use Black and Hispanic identity as a proxy for disadvantage. And my argument is that you actually get a better picture of who needs help by looking at socioeconomics and income. That picks out people in a more accurate way.
So economic-based policies, conservatives would push this a little bit further and go into family structure policies. So we would go, okay, you really want to address disparities, make sure you have a dad in the home.
Yeah.
A solid family matters. But he's not quite jumping all the way to family structures, but he wants to get off of the race-based disparities and get into economic-based disparities. He continues.
When you say that socioeconomics picks out people in a better way than race, when you do look at the socioeconomics, you see the huge disparity between white households and Black households. You see the huge disparity between white households and Hispanic households. So your argument, and I've read your book twice because I wanted to give it a chance, your argument that race has no place in that equation is really fundamentally flawed, in my opinion.
Well, there's 2 separate questions. One is whether each racial group is socioeconomically the same. That I agree with you. They're not.
They're not. And the stats show that.
But of course, I agree with that fully. The question is, how do you address that in the way that actually targets poverty the best?
Great.
And what Martin Luther King wrote in his book, Why We Can't Wait, is he called it, we need a Bill of Rights for the disadvantaged. And he said, yes, we should address racial inequality. Yes, we should address the legacy of slavery. But the way to do that is on the basis of class. And that will disproportionately target Blacks and Hispanics because they're disproportionately poor. But it will be doing so in a way that also helps the white poor, in a way that addresses poverty as the thing to be addressed.
Right. So if everything is based upon race, you shouldn't have wealthy Black, wealthy white, poor white, right? You should generally, if the problem we deal with in this country is systematic racism, you wouldn't have those distinctions that he's pointing out. You have wealthy white and poor white. You have wealthy Black and poor Black. So ask those questions as opposed to just assuming that we're an inherently racist society and all of our policies are based upon race. He's trying to point and push the public policy discussion in that direction.
Yeah, and he is correct on the socioeconomic side, but Sonny Hostina does have a point in the conversation that disproportionately the hurdles facing many of them, those minorities, are hurdles that other people that are Caucasian white don't necessarily face. And some of that are things like access to jobs and employment, access to home loans, things like that, which we've seen studies that have shown certain applications with black names versus white names, what are traditionally black names, white names, how those resumes, the exact same resume is handled differently by that same company as far as who jumps up to the next level. Same thing with approvals of home loans. We see those statistically vary based on race as well as socioeconomic. So Sonny's right that race has to be a portion of the conversation, but the author is, in my opinion, more correct, that it is more correct to target socioeconomic and to target class. That's the way to do it. But inside of that targeting, you also should, in my opinion, acknowledge the racial component of it. And there might be people in that socioeconomic class that might need a little more help than others, simply because they face more hurdles than others. Just an opinion.
And if there are if there are practices out there based upon people's races, like, so let's talk about the home loan applications or the job applications incident. Okay. Illegal, should be illegal, should be prosecuted, right? I think what conservatives are making the argument is if that's used in a reverse way, let's go to Harvard Asian school applications.
Yeah.
Right. So if you go, we got too many Asians because they're too good in math, we've got to start denying them attendance to our schools. That's the same thing.
Yeah. The thing for me is that and I agree with the analogy. I don't want to discount it. I hate the college entrance exam analogy only because that system is broken fundamentally. And I go back to legacies. Harvard, everybody's like, the Asians can't get in there. And I'm like, wait a minute. Harvard every year takes people that aren't qualified to go because of their last name.
Who mommy and daddy can write the paycheck to.
So the idea that for me, I acknowledge that it is incorrect for Harvard to limit the amount of Asian people getting in because of a quote unquote quota. But if we're really mad at it, the quota that is breaking the system are the legacies. Those are the people that are in those slots for the Asian people that are really good. It is not the minority. It is not the Black Hispanic student that is in there that is pushing out the Asian. It's the legacy. That's the person. If you're really worried about that equity in entrance, get rid of legacies. And so, but I understand that type of quota system is fundamentally incorrect. Yes.
Yeah. I think they were able to show that it was a racial-based quota system. It wasn't just legacy, but there was a system built in there.
Oh, yeah. But I'm just saying the system.
They were choosing based upon racial
But I'm
preference.
saying the choice, the reason they have that system in place is because of the choice they made earlier about legacies. If those legacy positions aren't there, there are more slots for the Asians. You don't necessarily need that cap on the Asian students, because I would be willing to bet that a lot more Asian students were denied entry based on legacy than they were based on preferential treatment to minorities. I don't have the proof behind it, but just knowing the system, that's my supposition, just knowing the system.
Can we move past all of this and get to a colorblind society?
Ooh.
Can we actually do that? Give me a call, 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971. Can you get to that?
Yeah. And what have your experience has been? Because people have had both religious, ethnic. There have been people that have been misidentified, someone that may be or look like the wrong Asian person, because Asians can be very, very racist against each other. There's a ranking inside
Japanese,
of the Asian culture.
Chinese,
yeah,
right?
Yep, and Korean. There's a ranking.
Let's go to Melissa in Lakewood. You've been very patient. Melissa, you're on the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Hi, I'm sorry, I'm in my bathroom. I'm one of those people that I'm a poor white. I grew up poor and white, but actually I'm Irish and Jewish, but I grew up, I went to Westwood Elementary School, and I got called honky every day, and my family's very poor, and the Mexican boys weren't allowed to date me. I didn't even know I was pretty until I was in high school and went to another state, but then I was poor, and so those kids didn't talk to me because they were rich kids. But anyway, I am just so offended by anyone who looks at me because I have long hair. long blonde hair, blue eyes, that I had some kind of privilege because that I did not. So it's just not fair.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, to Coleman Hughes' point, to say there's all this great privilege that exists out there based upon race, and if you grew up poor and white, which my wife did, she grew up very poor. There's not a lot of privilege
there isn't
that
a ton,
existed,
but there is in that demographic. I'm just guessing, Melissa. There is some inherent privileges, and one of the examples I will give is a conversation I had a number of years ago with Peter Boyles, and he was the same idea. He was like, I grew up very, very poor, and he was dirt poor, and he said I didn't have any white privilege. There's no white privilege, and I asked him, were you a member of the Steel Workers Union? He said yes. Were the black employees at the union allowed to be a union member? No. That's his white privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And the white privilege that you probably experienced and didn't see, Melissa, are things like walking into a store and not having security follow you around, walking into a store and them telling you that you have to walk out. And I didn't experience that myself until I went into a store in middle school with my cousin who's mixed racial, and he's black and white, and he looks black. And we were followed around several stores, and I didn't understand. He goes, oh, that's because of me. That's the white privilege inherently.
One last thing, my recent privilege was I got out of my BMW that is really nice, but I got it on a really good deal. I'm still poor.
Good job.
And some girls who were standing in front of the store started yelling at me because they said that I was rich, and they saw me get out of my Porsche. Like, it's a BMW, but anyway.
Yeah, and you're right, and that is just as bad as far as prejudice and everything else, and it's absolutely ridiculous because they made an assumption about you. They didn't look at your financials or judge you. Not even the idea that, wait a minute, how did this woman get to a point of being able to afford this car? That they didn't, and that's the problem in that encounter that I really, really have. They viewed you as an enemy rather than an aspiration. And I go back to a conversation we had and played some audio from Killer Mike of Run the Jewels, where he talks about growing up in Atlanta in a community that is concentrated black, but was different socioeconomically. So he, in his life, were able to see the people that ran the straight and narrow and were able to achieve. And he also saw the fools that went around and did all the crime and how they ended up in jail. He had a real world example of people to follow and people that showed him achievement. And I think sometimes, like your encounter there, those people are looking at achievement as a negative. And we've got to break that cycle as well.
Melissa, I appreciate the call. Melissa from Lakewood, give us a call, 303-696-1971.
Someone's calling right now.
Greg Lopez is calling me, actually.
Hey,
I'm going to see if we can get him on there.
Let's step aside and then you can chat with him.
We can get him here at the 8 o'clock hour. Okay.
Excellent. That's fantastic.
We'll get Greg Lopez on at 8 o'clock hour. You've been tuning into the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710, KNUS.
At this hour in Brussels, I'm Nishan Garg, and here are the top stories we are following. The U.S. government has approved an initial $60 million in emergency funds for the state of Maryland to clear debris and start rebuilding the Francis Scott Key Bridge, which was destroyed by a large container ship. Federal officials have reportedly said that the project could cost as much as $2 billion. Ira Spitzer reports.
The Department of Transportation called the $60 million a down payment toward initial costs and said that additional emergency relief program funding will be made available. President Biden has promised that the federal government will cover the entire cost of rebuilding the Baltimore Bridge, but that idea has already faced some opposition from fiscal conservatives in Congress.
The International Court of Justice has ordered Israel to allow humanitarian aid to flow into Gaza unhindered in order to avoid thousands starving to death in the enclave. UN agencies warned that complete famine could hit Gaza within weeks. Israel said on Monday that it would no longer follow UNRWA from operating in northern Gaza and blamed Hamas for the humanitarian crisis on the ground and for starting this war. The court says Israel has 30 days to show it has complied with the order. And that's what you need to know at this hour. I'm Nishan Garg in Brussels on Salem News Channel.
Upper 50s Friday, low 30s Friday night, mild for Saturday and Sunday, reaching the 60s, turning colder. Late Sunday, Sunday night, and Monday with a chance of showers. Meteorologist Don Day, 710 KNUS. Here's your 710 5-day forecast. It'll be partly cloudy
talking this very interesting discussion that talked about race on The View earlier this week. Can we ever get to a place where we're actually a colorblind society? Let's go to Mary in Wyoming. Mary, you're on the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. Good morning, Mary.
Hi, good morning. I don't think we'll ever get past the issue of race. And in fact, I think that's a human kind of thing. If you notice, there's always somebody that has to be on the lower end. A good example, I mean, I'm close to 80. I started work at 9 years old, so I have close to 70 years of work experience in having to have a job. My first one, not my first one, but one of the jobs I had was with the Good Hands folk. I was the first Black woman. And not only that, there was 4 of us women total, but the first Black woman. And we competed in an all-male environment. The men's titles were casualty claims adjusters. Do you know what our titles were? Bodily injury telephone claims handler. Bitch. That was the environment that we had.
Whoa, I've never heard that before.
And we never got the money.
Yeah.
And that's been the case all through my employment years. I have been pretty much the first Black woman in a lot of industries and never, ever got the money. It makes a difference in where I am now.
And Mary, that's a great point, because you've dealt with not only wage disparity based on being Black, but also being a woman. And you've been hit twice, and it's weird that the company did then, and some companies continue to pay people differently for the same work based solely on either skin pigmentation or based on chromosomes. That's very strange.
Pretty much that was it, is that I want to share. I don't believe there is going to be a change in that, especially when you have getting in the country with all these illegals coming in.
Mary,
this is going to be a whole different thing.
Mary, I'm interested in your take on that conversation between Whoopi and the author Coleman Hughes, where you seem to come from more of like Whoopi's experience, where she's like, do you realize how much we've had to come through and what we've had to deal with? And then Coleman Hughes, a young Black man born in 1996, is going, well, you know, we've talked about Black history in our schools. I grew up discussing it. I mean, talk to me a little bit about the generational difference. Do you think Black people born recently, Gen Z, millennials, are just having a different experience than what you had to go through?
That is so definitely true. And the frustration is that they don't understand how, well, 2 things. I was chapter president in NAACP youth thing. And back when we started having, which was in the 1960s, first of all, we would not have gotten the results that we had if we had not had the white community supporting us. People have a tendency to forget that. And that lack of knowledge and history of the civil rights movement kind of frustrates me, because they did not know how far we've come. We were redlined, and what did that mean? That it means that we were put in projects. I mean, you talk about the Jewish community, we were put in projects when you could not move outside that. There were covenants in the white neighborhoods that prevented you to be able to move out of the projects. There were, I mean, in my generation, they make it sound like everything was hundreds and hundreds of years ago. I experienced not being able to go into coffee shops and cresses and the rest of that stuff. My generation, I mean, I have experience in that. There's so much that was against us. I mean, in the job market, you couldn't, like I said, couldn't go to college. You had to go to a Black college. The education in schools, we had separate schools. And I grew up in the North, not the South. I mean, out of Seattle, Washington. So in other words, in those areas, like I said, Black kids, the only reason I made it out, I grew up in the projects, is my parents were Catholic, and I went to Catholic schools all the way, including high school. They sacrificed for me to be able to get a good education. That 4 years of Latin in the school that I went at, I went in the best Catholic school in Seattle at that time, is the reason that I was able to get out of what many of my friends weren't able to.
Mary, tell us about your feelings and your thoughts towards Ibrahim Kendi and kind of the anti-racism movement. Do you think that's helpful for our country?
I did not hear the conversation between Whoopi and the rest of it. I don't listen to The View.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Don't
no,
listen.
I guess the kind of BLM, Black Lives Matter movement, the anti-racism movement. So Coleman Hughes' critique is that we're focusing too much on race. We're race obsessed. Things were getting better. It wasn't until 2013 and 14. We won't be able to get to that clip now, but he makes the argument in 2014 that the rise of cell phones and all this stuff has brought us back to a place where we're too race obsessed. He'd like to move past it, focus more on class issues.
Interesting. I still don't see. I mean, I'm sorry. The way I look at it, I just don't see us getting beyond race. I think that it's like a tribal thing, that we still, and that's generational throughout history. And I don't see how we're going to, when you have a chance to say that you're better than someone else, I still think that that's an inherent part of being human.
Mary, I really appreciate your perspective and your wisdom. Not only are you a regular listener, which I honor so much, you have a beautiful voice for radio. So,
oh, thank you, and have a good day.
Yeah, Mary, thank you too. Mary from Wyoming, she's a regular caller.
She's great.
Interesting. I mean, so much of this, I think, is generational.
Yeah.
And Coleman Hughes, to his credit, though, is trying to critique what I think is a return back to race obsession under the anti-racists, which sounds weird because you would think that anti-racists aren't race obsessed, but they are. The Ibrahim Kendis and the who's the other?
I don't remember. And their filter is that race is the defining characteristic,
right?
And that's why they're called anti-racist, because they say that has to be what you lead with.
Right.
Every discussion, every interaction, every friendship, every job, it has to first deal with the racial issue, and then we go forward. Yeah.
And they're not. He goes on to call them neo-racists, so he thinks they're going back. Anyways, fascinating conversation. Mary, thank you so much for being a part of this. We'll continue this conversation. And Greg Lopez in the 8 o'clock hour. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710, KNUS.
Great text messages coming through. Let's get to Carlos real quick. Carlos, you're on the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. Good morning. Carlos.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Go ahead.
I just wanted to call in. I've been a listener for a while. I'm actually a Democrat, but I just wanted to say that the way you guys speak about issues is really sincere, and I appreciate it. But the fact of the matter, I used to go to college about 15 years ago, and one of the things that stuck out in my mind was they said, my instructor said, surround yourself with successful people, and you'll learn how to be successful.
Yeah.
And me being a Mexican male here, I'm not surrounded by successful people, whether my family, whether my friends. And so you don't pick up a lot of those little things that will help make you successful. And that's kind of one of the struggles that we have is we don't have a lot, well, at least in my opinion, we don't have a lot of successful people in our circles that we could kind of learn from and look and see how it's done. And so I think, finding a way to kind of just uplift, people like me, surround them with people who are successful so they can see how it's done will really help.
Carlos, I agree entirely with you that the social structures actually matter the most. You want to talk about real privilege.
Yep.
You want to talk about real privilege? You grew up with a mom and a dad in your household that are investing in you and going to do hard work.
Great point.
That's real privilege. All right, you're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show. Up next, Greg Lopez. You're not going to want to miss it. Our exclusive.
Yeah, he's the candidate in CD4, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Good morning, Denver. It's a very good morning. It's Good Friday. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show, 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, center, and crazy. And you could probably tell me who that crazy is based upon where you stand.
Not me. Stop it. I get enough of those text messages already.
Right.
So many.
It's going to be a beautiful day in Denver today. A little cooler than yesterday, 55 degrees. Tomorrow, 65. Sunday, 63. A very nice Easter. And hopefully you're having a lovely Holy Week. We're going to have in the 9 o'clock hour, Gino Geraci join us from KRKS, KRKS, our sister station here. He's also a pastor, talking about Good Friday and Easter. What does this all mean? What is it all about? You're not going to want to miss that. And coming up here shortly is going to be Greg Lopez. Big news coming out from late last night. A special vacancy committee was formed, and Greg Lopez was chosen to be the Republican nominee to fill Ken Buck's seat. So it will, unless, something wild happens between now and June 25th, Greg Lopez will likely take that seat. It's a predominantly Republican district representing basically the entire eastern part of the state. And so Greg Lopez winning that last night. We got into a detailed horse race analysis in the 6 o'clock hour. So if you missed any of that, go to 710 KNUS.
Because the thing
check out the podcast.
Jeff walks you through the decision process. It is as if he's watching it, streaming it, and he walks you through the decision-making process round by round. And how in the heck does our upcoming guest go from third to be the eventual nominee? There's a process, and there's a surprise there at the end when someone wants to throw a wrench, as Jeff accurately describes it, into the system and misses by that much. It's a really good story.
That's exactly right.
Story.
Greg Lopez implemented what's called the Lincoln Strategy.
Yeah.
So from the 1860
which had nothing
convention,
to do with logs or building little cabins, oddly enough.
Do you play with those growing up?
Yeah.
My grandparents always had them. Those were kind of cool.
Thank you for making me feel old. I appreciate that.
That was like all my cousins that were a generation older all played with those.
Yeah.
I was like Legos and Nintendo. And
I was
all that
mostly
stuff.
Legos too. We did have Lincoln Logs, and let me tell you, not so much fun. There's about 30
you basically
seconds.
can build one structure.
Yeah, you got like 30 seconds of fun in Lincoln Log commercials. That's it. That's why the commercials are only that long. It's all the fun you can show. After that, the kid's like, cool, can I light this on fire? That's basically the choice.
So the Lincoln Strategy, it was implemented in 1860. So contentious Republican convention for who was going to be the president. The Republican Party, newly formed, anti-slavery abolitionist party. And there were big names in it that were vying for the Republican nomination for president. And Lincoln, who was well known, but he had only served one term in Congress, not a U.S. senator, lost that race for U.S. Senate, shows up at the convention, and he's not everybody's first pick, but he's a comfortable second pick for everybody. They believe in him. They know his values. He's well known within the party. And so as the big names are fighting each other and deadlocked, they all start to turn and look, and they go, Abraham Lincoln would be a good choice for the nomination of our party. And so they went that direction. And the history. Abraham Lincoln became president, won second term, and helped keep this country together. So it's a viable strategy for someone that's well-liked in the party infrastructure, well-known, but isn't necessarily at the top of a contentious primary race, which was what was happening in CD4 and will continue to happen. In June, you're going to have 11 plus candidates on a Republican primary ballot. They're all firing at each other right now. It's Jerry Sonnenberg, it's Mike Lynch, it's Paul Harvey, it's Richard Holtorf, it's Lauren Boebert, it's Deborah Flora. It's all of them in this contentious party. And in comes Greg Lopez last night, and he promises to be a placeholder.
So smart.
And
So
he goes, look,
strategically
I'm not going to run in this contentious primary. I know you all have friends that are part of this. I know you're invested. You got your horse that's your favorite, but I'm not going to play that game. You all know me. You know where I stand. You know my values. You know I'll do a good job. And when it comes time for whoever's elected in this November to take that, I'll happily walk away in January And so I'm a good, what's called placeholder candidate. And so he starts out in third place. By the sixth round, he's in first place and wins. And it was a fascinating view into how party politics can work sometimes. So we're going to get to Greg Lopez in just a second. Let's check in on the news with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Morning, Jeff. Morning, Billy. 40 and partly cloudy in Denver, expecting highs in the mid-50s. The 7-10 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story, Denver police say a scooter rider was hit this morning at about 3 o'clock. The driver fled. It happened near Spear and Colfax, and the rider is in serious condition. The police have not shared any description of the vehicle or suspect. Boulder police investigating an armed burglary this morning on the hill near the CU campus. The shelter-in-place warning was lifted. The suspect is 5'10", non-white, wearing a gray hoodie. He was carrying 3 backpacks. You have to put the goods somewhere, I guess. A United Airlines flight from San Francisco to Paris was diverted to DIA early this morning due to engine problems. It landed safely, but they're still trying to get the passengers to France. Former Presidents Obama, Clinton joined President Biden last night, Lizzo, and other celebrities, and they raised $25 million to pay for horrible TV commercials and much more. President Trump was at a wake for a fallen Queens police officer on Thursday afternoon. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton.
It's important to recognize, for example, what it would mean to have a president who refused to abide by the rulings of our courts.
No, wait a minute. That's Liz Cheney crying about conservatives, Trump, and making tons of money doing it. Is she still talking? Greg Lopez nominated last night to serve out the rest of Ken Buck's seat in CD4. Buck bailed a few weeks ago, potentially helping Democrats. The request from the Maryland governor, or Mayor Wes Moore, the governor, for $60 million in emergency relief after the bridge collapse has been approved.
We need to continue to focus on recovery because it is our obligation to bring a sense of closure to these families.
All right, Jeff, this one is for you. 2 people in custody after another shooting at the Doubletree shelter.
Oh, Mike Johnston's hotel from hell.
Goodness gracious, man. I mean, you know that's not going to stop.
Jeez, no, it's not.
No. 35 in Louisville, 36 in Lone Tree, 40 in Denver. Hey, DU, a 2-1 victory over UMass in the first round of the NCAA hockey playoffs. The Avs lose in a shootout against the Rangers last night. The Diamondbacks, 14 runs in the third inning, breaking the franchise record and ruined the Rockies' opening day last night, 16-1 in Arizona. Alabama, Clemson, they pull off upsets in the Sweet 16 last night. They were mild upsets. Illinois moves on, and so does UConn. The tournament continues today. CU Lady Buffs getting ready for a big one tomorrow. They take on Caitlin Clark, who was offered $5 million by Ice Cube's league, the 3-on-3 league, and the CU Buffs take on the Hawkeyes tomorrow afternoon. Nuggets and T-Wolves tonight in Lodo.
It is only Friday. Sunday is a coming.
Yes, it is. Good Friday. Jeff and Bill continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Here's your 710 5-day forecast. It'll be partly cloudy today. Temperature readings upper 50s and lower 60s. We're looking at temperatures tonight in the middle 30s. Highs tomorrow will be upper 50s. Now, Friday afternoon and evening, Friday night, could bring a few scattered areas of rain showers, isolated thunderstorms. Upper 50s Friday, low 30s Friday night. Mild for Saturday and Sunday, reaching the 60s, turning colder. Late Sunday, Sunday night, and Monday with a chance of showers. Meteorologist Don Day, 710 KNUS.
All right, joining us on the Jeff and Bill show is Greg Lopez. Greg Lopez won last night the nomination, the Republican nomination for the vacancy to fill Ken Buck's seat. There will be an election. The Democrats will choose their candidate on Monday, but it's a predominantly Republican seat. So this gives Greg Lopez a really strong shot to become the new congressional member from Colorado Congressional District 4. Lopez served as a mayor for 2 terms in Parker, Colorado. He also served with the Small Business Administration. Mr. Lopez, congratulations. Thanks for being on the Jeff and Bill show.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Well, let's walk through first what it was like last night. First round of ballots, you end up in 3rd place, and then the night begins to change. Give us a sense of what happened in that room and how you ended up winning on the 6th round of votes.
Well, you know, it was an interesting process for those that were able to watch it or listen to it. As you know, we only had 2 minutes to make our acceptance speeches, and then they started voting. And then when they came up to the last 5 candidates, we were allowed 6 minutes to speak. And after that round, after my remarks, I gained 10 votes and overtook the lead on that round itself. And then it just started to progress. And yeah, you know, the room was the atmosphere in the room was shifting. And I'm going to tell you, you know, last night we got to see the real character of some of the individuals. And I want to say that, you know what, I always knew this and it showed last night, but Representative Richard Hortorf and I share the same values and beliefs, because last night, you know, he decided to put people over politics. And he told people that, you know what, anybody that was supporting him, they should support me. You know, he is a strong leader that I'm proud to call a friend. And you know what he does at the Capitol every day? He's a fighter. And so, you know, at the end, the last minute, it was pins and needles, because, you know, it was the 3 of us. And when I saw what might transpire, you know, I just held my ground and hoped for the best. And I was successful.
Yeah, so let's talk about that final round. So you go into the 5th ballot, and it's between, at that point, it's Ted Harvey gets some votes, Jerry Sonnenberg gets some votes, and then you're in the lead. So they go to the 6th round, and in between those 2 rounds, Ted Harvey gets up and says, I would like my supporters to support Jerry Sonnenberg. You only needed 6. He had some 20 plus votes at that point. You only needed 5 to get over the hump. You got 6 votes, but that was shocking, I think, to a lot of people to see Ted Harvey go in support of Jerry Sonnenberg, one of his opponents in this primary. Why did Ted go that route?
You know, Jeff, I'm not in Ted's mind. I don't know. You know, ultimately, I guess he thought that it would be best to throw his support for Jerry. But, you know, only time will tell whether that move helped them in the assembly or it's going to hurt them in the assembly. But, you know, the people were making a statement because I was the candidate that was gaining votes. Every round I was gaining votes. I wasn't losing votes. I was gaining. And, you know, you had the other candidates pretty much had peaked. And so the only way that I could be perhaps challenged seriously was if they combined their votes. And so for whatever reason, they decided to do that, but the people still stuck to their ground. And like you said, I was able to get the last remaining 5 votes.
Why do you think those votes went with you? What was it in your message? Because you had good Republicans. They're all good Republicans. There's no real wishy-washy Republicans in that mix. But you stood out. What was it at the end of the day that drove people to you, and why were you gaining successfully with each ballot?
You know, I think, Jeff, that one of the things that I can do perhaps more effectively than others is I can connect with people. People know that I will always put people over politics. I'm not looking to pad my resume or anything like that. I want to do the right thing. And I told them, I said, look, I know who my boss is, and I'm going to transform this vacancy committee into an accountability committee. And I'm going to reach out to you, and we're going to have Zoom call meetings, and we're going to discuss what's happening in Washington, what are some of the issues that are going on, and how that applies to CD4. And I'm going to bring you together to give me your wisdom, to give me your thoughts. I want to hear from you because I'm your representative. It's not the other way around. And so I think they appreciated the fact that I was telling them, your job's not done. You think you're coming here and just being a vote for a candidate. I need you to help me guide our district by giving me your thoughts and your advice because you are my boss. And I think they appreciated that. I think it's been a long time since they heard someone to say clearly that their job is to be a true public servant.
I think they had a strong track record of history with you. They felt comfortable with you. You're not a wild card in the sense that they don't really know which direction you're going to go. And I've brought this up before. You show up to have fights, whether it's dealing with overdevelopment that might be taking place in Elbert County or pro-life bills down at the state capitol or dealing with metro districts and excessive fees. You're a guy that's in it because of the fight for what's right. And even if it's just a testimony for a little bill, you would always show up. So I think over the years, people built that trust factor with you. And as I mentioned, you went into it with a Lincoln-like strategy. I may not be everybody's first pick, but I tend to be just about everybody's comfortable second pick. And that worked out for you yesterday. Let's pivot now. You're going to be in a general election. Your candidate or your opponent will be chosen Monday when the Democrats host their special vacancy committee meeting. What is your message to voters in Congressional District 4?
My message is going to be the same. We need to protect our nation. The border needs to be closed. We need to focus on the quality of life that we have here in America and how it's being deteriorated by all the decisions that are going on. And I want to let people know that, our national debt of $34 trillion, it increases by $1 trillion every 100 days. I don't think the general public truly understands that, how much in debt our nation's in. And so I'm going to have conversations. I'm going to have conversations with Democrats, with unaffiliated voters. I'm going to represent everyone, not only those that vote for me, but also those that don't vote for me. That's what a true public servant is. And so that's the message I'm going to deliver to them. I think that they're ready for some real statesmanship to step to the plate, and they're willing to have some good conversations about what can we do to make sure that not only CD4 is protected, more importantly, that we start talking to each other about the challenges that we face as a nation.
Now, Greg Lopez, the nominee for the special election in CD4, joining Jeff and Bill with his exclusive. Thank you so much for your time today. Mr. Lopez, a little bit of a gut check time here.
Sure.
I want to talk to you about the preparations you are making personally, but also psychologically to avoid that sweet song of power and influence. We've seen over and over again lawmakers going into Washington and saying, I'm only going to serve so many terms, and I have so much to do more, and I really like this paycheck. Now, I firmly believe that you want to be there just for this short term, but talk to me personally what you've had to go through to ensure that you're not going to be seduced by all of that power and all of that money.
Well, let me tell you, you're right. Some people go up there with good intentions. I think they all do. And before long, they go to the dark side, right? Because they see the power, they see the money.
And they learn when to trade stocks. I don't know what sort of a school they have when you get into Congress. And all of a sudden, they teach you how to be a stock trading genius. But you need to share that with us, sir. You need to share that. Help a brother out.
There you go. But you know what? It's never been about the money for me. And it's never been about the title. if I really wanted to be in Congress and I wanted to do this, I would be running as a candidate. People called me and said, Greg, you should run. I said, look, I'm not interested in running for congressional because I know what's up there. Remember, I used to be the highest ranking official here in Colorado for the United States Small Business Administration. I know the internal ugliness of the administration out there, so I'm not interested. And you know what? The one thing that I have that nobody has is my wife, is my shield.
Oh.
She is the one that always does a gut check with me to make sure that I am doing the right thing. And I always remember my grandfather told me, you know what, son, there's only one thing that no one can take away from you, but you can throw away. And that one thing is the integrity of your last name.
Yeah.
So if you want your last name to be honored and respected, don't you ever do anything that will tarnish that.
Now, this may be the quote of the morning when Greg Lopez says, I don't want to be a congressman. I know what's up there. That may be the quote of the morning. Thank you. Thank you for that.
We're talking with Greg Lopez, and to clarify, so he's going to fill a special seat. He's going to finish Ken Buck's term, but he's not going to run for the office after that. So there's going to be a separate primary. If you're a Republican voter or even an independent voter in Colorado in Congressional District 4, you're going to get 2 ballots on June 25th. You're going to get one that's to fill and finish Ken Buck's term. That's going to have a Republican on it. It's going to have a Democrat on it. It may have an independent on it. We'll have to see, but you're going to have a smaller ballot. And then you're going to get a primary ballot for the future holder of that office. And that's going to have everybody from Lauren Boebert to Deborah Flora to Jerry Sonnenberg. The whole cast of characters will be on that list. Are you willing to make an endorsement for who you will support, Greg Lopez, on that Republican primary list?
Well, Jeff, we don't know who's on the primary yet, right? I've been watching these candidates. I've been looking at them. I want this district to have the right representation. I think someone that has my values, someone that believes the way I do. But you know what? I'm going to hold that back until I get a little bit more into this, because right now, like you said, I have a race to focus in on. I have to make sure that we win the special election, and I'm not taking that for granted by any stretch of the imagination. So I'm going to focus on my race. I'm going to focus on making sure that the conservative narrative gets out there, and that's what I'm going to be focusing in on. So that's where I stand.
This is so new. I mean, you're within hours. He probably got to bed at like 2 or 3 in the morning last night and got up and got on his radio program, which I appreciate, Greg.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a website yet where people can learn more about you?
No, not yet. We'll have one up here. Yeah.
I love that.
We'll have one up here in the next 3 to 4 days. You can be rest assured.
And again, I have to give you so much credit, and I have so much respect for you, Greg, that you came in as this independent voice inside the primary, because from where I'm sitting, and again, I'm an unaffiliated voter, I appreciate it because you allow the primary in that district, in my opinion, to still be pure. You allow someone like yourself to come in as a placeholder, and the primary choice this fall is just as pure as if Buck had decided to leave 2 days before the end of the session. I really, really have to applaud the way that you approached this and the way you came forward with this idea. I think you have done a great service both for Colorado and for the GOP in that district. I just thank you as an unaffiliated. I don't even wear the jersey. I want to thank you personally. I think you did a great job. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Bill. I really appreciate your comments. And, this is what politics is all about, right? It's making sure that we put the people together. And to your point, you know what? Now the candidates can actually make their case to the general public in the primary, and they will pick the best choice that they believe should step in after I leave in January.
And we hope there's other stuff in the future for you as well after the 6 months. We really, really, really do here on Jeff and Bill Show.
I think he's going to miss out on some of the fun stuff, though. He won't be able to be part of a State of the Union yet. I think that's like the only.
What props was he going to be
It's
able
like
to bring?
one of the
What could
good
he do?
things.
What was his
Maybe-
outrage going to be? He could yell something at someone.
Right,
Yes,
he could yell
there's so
at
many things.
something.
Yeah, he's going to miss out on that.
Greg Lopez is going to be serving about 6 months if he wins in June. So we'll be following him. And during that general election, the general special election, I know it's confusing. There's a lot of these little elections happening. We'll continue to have him back, and hopefully the Democrat opponent as well. On for the primary, for the Republican primary, we've had just about everybody.
Yeah.
And we've put those up on our YouTube channel, 710 KNUS, so you can go watch those interviews. We ask a whole host of questions, including some rapid fire questions. So we want you to be informed to make the best decision on who can represent you in Congressional District 4. Greg Lopez on an exclusive interview on 710 KNUS. Thanks so much for being on, and congratulations
sir.
on your win
Congrats.
last night.
Hey, thank you guys. You guys have a great day.
All right. We'll continue to follow that race as well as all the congressional races here in Colorado. Men, you've heard a lot about how treating low testosterone can improve your sleep, your workouts, your energy levels, and more. But I want to talk to you about your love drive, because low testosterone can have a significant impact on your desire for intimacy. And if you're in a relationship or wanting to be in a relationship, a low love drive can be a big problem. There's good news. Go to RockyMountainMen'sClinic.com and take the low T quiz on their website. It's a simple 10-question quiz with yes or no answers. It takes 2 minutes. Then schedule a consult with Rocky Mountain Men's Clinic. A Colorado licensed medical provider will review your results with you and discuss your options. Cost of the appointment is only $99, which includes medical consult, T and PSA test. If you sign up for testosterone treatment the day of your appointment, your visit is free. Rocky Mountain Men's Clinic has served the Front Range of Colorado for nearly a decade and successfully treated tens of thousands of men. Call them today at 720-440-7900, 720-440-7900, or visit RockyMountainMen'sClinic.com, RockyMountainMen'sClinic.com. I'd like to get your calls and texts on Greg Lopez in the special election in CD4. Good thing? Was it a good thing that he won last night? Ted Harvey made a strong push at the end to try to get his supporters over to Jerry Sonnenberg. They all didn't go. Majority of them did. But Greg Lopez was able to get just what he needed. 1+ votes to get over that finish line. And it really was a horse race. Is he the best guy in this unique circumstance that we went with a placeholder? Republicans went with a placeholder for CD4 to allow a pure primary to take place, or should somebody that's running in that race have gotten the nod?
We often hear that I'm wrong. I think it's great that there's a placeholder. So why am I wrong? And the other thing that Jeff and I will probably discuss here in the next half hour or so is why Whoopi Goldberg thinks that you're all racists.
We'll continue that conversation. 303-696-1971, the only talk show in Denver where you are part of the conversation. Give us a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the 710 KNUS app. We'll get to your calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS.
At this hour in Brussels, I'm Ishan Garg, and here are the top stories we are following. The U.S. government has approved an initial $60 million in emergency funds for the state of Maryland to clear debris and start rebuilding the Francis Scott Key Bridge, which was destroyed by a large container ship. Federal officials have reportedly said that the project could cost as much as $2 billion. Ira Spitzer reports.
The Department of Transportation called the $60 million a down payment toward initial costs and said that additional emergency relief program funding will be made available. President Biden has promised that the federal government will cover the entire cost of rebuilding the Baltimore Bridge, but that idea has already faced some opposition from fiscal conservatives in Congress.
The International Court of Justice has ordered Israel to allow humanitarian aid to flow into Gaza unhindered in order to avoid thousands starving to death in the enclave. UN agencies warned that complete famine could hit Gaza within weeks. Israel said on Monday that it would no longer follow UNRWA from operating in northern Gaza and blamed Hamas for the humanitarian crisis on the ground and for starting this war. The court says Israel has 30 days to show it has complied with the order. And that's what you need to know at this hour. I'm Ashan Garg in Brussels on Salem News Channel.
And evening, Friday night, could bring us these scattered.
Fascinating conversation. We just wrapped up with Greg Lopez, an exclusive here on 710 KNUS. Just hours ago, less than 12 hours ago, he won the nomination for the Republican Party to represent them in Congressional District 4. So he'll have a general election for a special vacancy to fill Ken Buck's seat in June. We want to get into all the details about that and the primary ballot you're going to get. But great conversation with him. Doesn't even have a website ready yet. So he went yesterday as a placeholder candidate, took the Lincoln strategy. I'm not everybody's first pick, but I think a majority of people will be comfortable with me as a second pick. So as the evening progressed, he went from third place on the ballot to winning in the 6th round of the ballot.
So smart.
And he'll be the Republican nominee. So we'll continue to track that. And as I mentioned during that interview, we have all the candidates' interviews up on our YouTube channel, so you can watch these. Look, Republicans aren't going on Channel 9. And for good reason. They're not. It's not fair. It's not honest. So they're not going there. They're willing to come with us. And we are willing to have a perfectly fine, fair conversation with Democrats too.
Absolutely.
We're inviting them. We're not going to be mean-spirited. It's not gotcha journalism. This isn't, when you were 15 years old, you posted this on your social media. Maybe we'll ask, but it's going to be honest about the issues and the race itself.
Yeah.
So you can get that honest news with 710 KNUS.
And that's the thing with Jeff and I, if we ever have any Democrats, they're going to have the spine to come on the show here, is that we will focus on the issues. This is not going to be about personal foibles or anything else. As you've heard, I've asked some hard questions, and Jeff has too, of some of the Republican candidates.
Yep.
And none of them have been of a personal nature. It's all going to be about the issues. And both Jeff and I have enumerated serious disagreements we have with the state and national Democrat representation. And we're more than happy to have that conversation. But if you're going to show up, make sure you're going to be here to talk about the issues.
Yep.
It's not going to be cupcakes and kittens and we're all going to hug it out after a Cal Clark interview. No, sorry. That's just not what I'm going to roll like.
We'll get to Janice in just a second. I wanted to point this out. Powerful front page today on the Wall Street Journal. Today is the 1-year anniversary of Evan Gershkovich. He was the reporter from the Wall Street Journal that's now been imprisoned in Russia. Look, there's this weird thing happening within the conservative movement where all of a sudden we're like cozying up with Russia and Putin. I understand that not every critique that Joe Biden makes towards Russia is totally fair and honest and balanced. But this idea that somehow it's a wonderful place over there where you can move your family to and enjoy all the wonderful freedoms you have here in America is just not true at all.
It was like you saw the Tucker Carlson Moscow grocery store video, and he came out of that going, this is great, and it only cost us this much. You know what Tucker didn't include in that statement? What's the monthly income in Russia?
Right, exactly.
That the average Russian can't afford that grocery bill going through the store that he went through, and he spent money as if he is in the upper strata of the Russian society. And he thought that was great, but he needed some perspective on that. And that's kind of the issue.
And I've got some personal perspective on this because I went to Russia in college for spring break with a buddy. I got arrested.
Worst spring break ever. Those wet t-shirt contests or something totally different. It was everybody
especially
in chains,
in Moscow
they were being
and
whipped at the same time. Yes, they were all dissidents. Yes, different.
I got arrested every day at lunchtime.
That's fantastic.
Every single day at
Every
lunchtime,
day,
we'd be walking around Moscow, and the police would hear me speaking English, and I got arrested.
Yeah.
Why? Because I paid for that police officer's lunch that day.
Yeah. He was like, I can put my finger on the system here, and America will pay me.
Your passport not wrong. It's not right. It's not right. We've got to take you. Okay. Can 20 rubles or whatever it is that you pay over there, does that solve this problem? But well, yes, it does.
Yeah.
So
oddly
off I
enough,
went.
yes, it clears up my vision tremendously. I don't see that. This is amazing.
So on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, it's blank.
Wow.
1 year stolen from Evan Gershkovich. His story should be here. A year in Russian prison, a year of stolen stories, stolen joys, stolen memories. The crime, journalism.
Wow.
Powerful.
That
So
is powerful.
the Wall Street Journal fighting back for him. And Hugh Hewitt had a great interview with the chief editor of the Wall Street Journal about everything they're doing to try to get him back. But heartbreaking.
I think Putin wants other people.
Yes.
He wants people
Yes.
back. And
That's
we've
exactly what's
seen
happening.
a couple of other people that either had dual citizenship or partial citizenship or connections here to America. He's picked up several people in the last couple of months too. So I still think he's collecting some assets and he's trying to get a trade. Yeah.
You think you got freedom of journalism, freedom of speech, freedom of religion? I know we've got our own problems in this country, but Biden absolutely needs to be replaced, and Donald Trump will make a great president. But this is the greatest country in the history of the world. Don't be running over there thinking that it's somehow some bastion of freedom.
Yeah, no one would trade, even if you believe that Joe Biden has weaponized the Department of Justice, everything else. No one would trade that system for what Putin has the ability to do.
100%.
We have to go back to when the USSR fell apart and Putin was putting together the oligarchy. They started to get a little too big for their britches, that maybe they didn't have to listen to Putin. He went out and grabbed the richest one, threw him in prison and said, until you publicly announce your fealty to me, you stay there.
Yep.
And then he looked very carefully at all the rest of them. They've all fallen in line. That's how he plays.
Let's go to Janice in Walsenburg about the Greg Lopez victory last night. Janice, thanks so much for being on the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, I think it's great that Greg got the nomination.
Yeah, what do you like about Greg?
Well, if we'd have had our choice down here in southern Colorado, he'd have been our governor.
Yeah.
But, we got overwhelmed by the North Colorado people.
Janice, to your point, that was part of his calculations, was he won that part of the state in the primary battle with Heidi Ganahl.
Yep, he sure did.
What is it about him that you all like out on the Eastern Slope?
Well, like he says, he's not out there trying to promote himself for more power. He's probably trying to help us gain more things. The people here get less whatever's hitting us. That legislature up there is just totally out of control. I mean, my God, we can't stand what's coming out of up there, especially the agriculture people down here.
Yeah, there's a lot of frustration that the political leadership of this state has no idea how people on the eastern part in the ag communities live their lives, provide for their families. They're just totally out of touch. So I get that frustration. Now, do you have a pick in the primary for CD4 that Greg's not a part of?
I sure do.
Who's that?
Who?
Oh, Lauren.
Yeah, what do you like about Lauren Boebert? She's not from your district.
Well, she's, we voted for her. Sure did.
Oh, when she was redistrict, prior to the redistricting?
Yeah, from District 3.
My mistake. My mistake.
Oh, interesting. Forgotten about that.
Well, one thing about Lauren is she's been there. She's got some committee appointments and things like that. She knows the deal. She's part of the Freedom Caucus. She stands up and talks to people. She's in the news, so we get a lot of news, the notoriety and news that we wouldn't otherwise get, maybe.
But is it always good notoriety? Because I would think that some of that isn't always necessarily good press. I know that any press is good press, according to some people, but I disagree.
Well, yeah, I guess a few things maybe, but I pretty much agree with most of the stuff she says. Yeah.
Now, how do you think the larger part of the district will deal with the carpet bag analogy of Lauren Boebert? Because we know that everybody in that primary race whose last name is not Boebert is going to levy that allegation against her. What do you feel about that? Do you think it's going to stick? What's your impression?
Well, there's some good candidates running. I like Deborah Flora, the other fellow, the other rancher, not Sonnenberg, the other guy. I like him. But
Holtorf,
yeah. But Sonnenberg, I don't know. Sounds like shades of Ken Buck to me. Because he did a few things in our legislature that weren't good for Colorado. So
yeah, we asked him about that when we interviewed him. John Caldera one time gave him the Californian of the Year award, and he had a good response to that. He said that his primary focus at that point was making sure rural hospitals had the support that they needed. But it's a fair critique. Janice from Walsenburg, thanks so much. Appreciate the call. Her line will be open 303-696-1971, 303-696-1971. At the top of the hour, we interviewed Greg Lopez, an exclusive on 710 KNUS about his victory last night at the Congressional District 4 Republican special election for the vacancy at Ken Buck. My goodness, it gets complicated sometimes in politics. But go back and listen to that, 710knus.com, if you'd like to hear that interview. And we'll continue to follow that. We'll get to your calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710, KNUS.
Jeff and Bill Show, just wrapping up a great interview with Greg Lopez. He won less than 12 hours ago the nomination to represent the Republican Party in the special election for Ken Buck's seat, which will take place in June. And it was kind of a sly move he did. He came in as the placeholder. So while everybody else was debating in this primary, he said, guys, look, you could put me in. I'll serve there 6 months from June to January. I probably won't even put anything on the wall. I'll serve the constituents. I'll represent the Republican Party there. I'll vote along with Mike Johnston and make sure that we have a good conservative majority there. And you don't have to get into the primary. You can still have the primary. And he went from third place to first place over the course of 6 ballots and won. And so great conversation with him. If you missed that, go back to the 710 KNUS podcast, and you can listen to that entire race or that entire conversation there. Let us know what you think about that and who you're supporting for CD4. I'd love to hear that. So Jared Polis making a run at the gay games.
Yeah. Didn't think he was going to wear the singlet, but it was odd. It was my choice, but at least he shaved. I'm sorry.
I had 2 questions, but here's Jared Polis on his Twitter handle.
Hi, I'm Colorado Governor Jared Polis. I may be biased, but Colorado is without a doubt the best location for the Gay Games 2030. Colorado is a state where athletes can thrive no matter who they are or who they love or how they identify. From the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Training Center in Colorado Springs to our championship-winning professional sports teams, we're proudly the best state for athletes to train and compete. As governor, I'm deeply committed to building a Colorado for all, where everyone can thrive and where we're proud to welcome athletes of all backgrounds
for debate.
compete right here in the great state of Colorado. And I hope to welcome the Gay Games to Colorado in 2030. Maybe I'll even try out for the baseball team.
I had 2 questions. One, what are gay games? I had to go look this up.
Oh, yeah.
That just opens itself up for...
Oh, yeah, it does. All sorts of jokes.
things.
All sorts. And then for me, listening to that announcement, God, I hate that music behind him. That really, whoever's
that
in
was
charge
out
of
of the
this-
90s.
Yeah. Whoever's in charge of that PR side of things, give me a call. I'll help you out with some little things. I mean, I saw you do the thing when he was breaking the glass and he couldn't smell again, and you had the thing on the floor and you're trying to special session. That didn't work out so well.
Do you know
Now we got
why?
this.
Do you know why? He's at a place where he knows he's reached the peak of his political aspirations.
Yeah. The thing for me though is that these type of things can be used on the other side and can be used, to hurt them. I mean, if you really want to put this thing forward, there's so many better. I would say, I'll say so many better gay anthems. I mean, there's some Lady Gaga stuff there. There's some things you could do. I can help you out. I mean, I'm just telling you, there's some things I could identify for you that would really resonate better with the audience. But no, well.
But then I had the question, like, are the Olympics so bad you got to have your own gay games? Like, is there so much discrimination? I went back and looked at the history of it. There's a whole history of this. And I guess it was early on kind of discriminatory. And so they formed this. Tina Turner sang it the first year. They did this in San Francisco. But is this needed still? Do you need?
That's a good question.
I guess you do. If you have an event that elevates the worldview you have, then I guess you're going to keep that going. But it's not like there's rampant discrimination in the Olympics,
well,
is there?
Not as much anymore. And I think that's why it grew out of, and you're absolutely right, it grew out of because of the discrimination that was there at the time. And remember that in these conversations, a lot of times, even with, and we take the same tactic in some ways with the transgender issue that, hey, if you want to be accepted, start your own. The idea being that rather than the transgendered, male to female athlete, rather than wanting to participate in the female athletic sports,
do your own.
And that's,
so then they do.
And that's what they did. They went and they did their own. I think you're accurate that the same forms of discrimination aren't there, but I still think that they do face discrimination, but not necessarily on the Olympics platform. The thing for me that I'm happy to support this is tourism and money. So if the money is, then tourists want to come here. Sure. Yep. Absolutely. If you want to have the redneck games here and you want to come here and do the tourism and spend the monies, yes, please. If you want to have
do you think that would be allowed though in this culture if you did the Christian games? the Jewish games,
Yeah.
the redneck games.
Okay, wait. Okay. Christian games. Okay, what are our events? You'd have to do the 20-yard dash, the 40-yard dash would be there, but you do it on your knees. You got to do back and forth like on your knees.
Like you're
things like that.
getting
Yes, exactly.
the Eucharist.
Yes, and then you'd have to be doing that whole thing with the Eucharist and the bus. That would be a test too, kind of like with the where they have the waiters and waitresses have to run. How quickly can you get the Eucharists to the Eucharistic ministers and then distribute them out to the? I mean, there's some team things here. Those are the events.
A whole line
yes,
we could
are.
go down.
Yes, and we're not even
longest confession.
Oh, yes.
It'd be like an ultra marathon. Can
Yes.
you keep talking? You can't just do silent.
Yes.
Can you come up with so many sins
Exactly.
you violated?
Yes. And I'm sorry, but baptism lends itself to an entire competition in the swimming department there. So there's a whole thing we can do there. There's so many things we can do.
I feel like you could joke with the Christians on this one.
Sure.
I don't know if you can joke too much on the gay games.
No,
you might get some
can't.
angry
That's why we did this one.
responses.
Yeah, because again, we're both Christians, so that's we're making fun of our own. So yeah, but I would love to see that. Absolutely. Oh, and you'd have to do also again. There would be the Catholic event, and this is just for the Catholics. It would be for the priests that can deliver the shortest homily because they know that we're 45 minutes from kickoff. That's a Catholic thing. So that would be an event there.
Shortest homily.
Yes, exactly.
Here's the Protestant one.
Yeah.
How quickly can you nail something to a door?
Oh, yes, exactly. Yes. That is fantastic. Oh, that's good. Yes.
The 95 Theses against the
exactly.
door.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, man, that would be fun.
That
All
would be.
right. Well, they wouldn't even, if they got it, the gay games wouldn't be in Colorado till 2030. But kind of interesting.
Yeah.
They're going out there for
Again,
that.
they want to come spend the money, please go right ahead. I'm more than happy. As long as your money is green and says USA, please bring as much of it here as possible. I need more of it.
And we'd be all open to it. Bring the Christian games, the
Yes,
Jewish games. And I'd love
absolutely.
to know what the Jewish games would look like.
Yeah. We've got some friends. Maybe we'll get them in on
Yeah,
this.
right. We have some text
Yeah.
messengers. Let us know. When we come back in the 9 o'clock hour, Gino Geraci from 94.7 The Word KRKS is going to join us on the special Good Friday edition of the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710 KNUS. Oh, we're such sinners.
Good morning, Denver. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show on 710 KNUS for this very special Good Friday broadcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you all the freshest insights and hottest takes from the right, left, center, and crazy. And crazy is based upon where you stand, probably. It's going to be a beautiful day in Denver, a high of 55. Saturday, 65, Sunday, 63. Spring just kind of peeking in, but if you've grown up in Denver, you know you never plant until after Mother's Day, so don't let this get to you. We're gearing up for a whole nother hour of engaging discussions and critical analysis, most importantly, your calls and text, because this is where Denver's voice is heard loud and clear. Phone number 303-696-1971. Text us on the 710 KNUS app. Grab your coffee, Denver, and let's dive into the issues that matter most to you right here, right now. In just a few minutes, we're going to host a great discussion on this Good Friday with Gino Geraci. He's a pastor at Calvary South Denver in Littleton, Colorado. He's also on 94.7 The Word, KRKS, our sister station. We're going to get a little celebration of Good Friday and Easter Sunday. This is the holiest week for Christians across the world. So we're going to talk to Gino, Pastor Geraci, here in just a second. Let's check in on the news with Blake Olson. Good morning, Blake.
Morning, Jeff. 43 and partly cloudy in Denver, expecting highs in the mid-50s today. The 710 5-day forecast is coming up. Our top story, actor Louis Gossett Jr. is dead at the age of 87. His family confirmed the news on Friday. Gossett Jr. won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor in his role in An Officer and a Gentleman. He also won an Emmy for his role in the mini-series Roots. Greg Lopez nominated to serve out the rest of Ken Buck's seat in CD4.
I can connect with people. You know, people know that I will always put people over politics. I know who my boss is, you know, and I'm going to transform this vacancy committee into an accountability committee. And we're going to discuss what's happening in Washington, what are some of the issues that are going on, and how that applies to CD4.
Lopez was on with Jeff and Bill earlier this morning. A United Airlines flight from San Francisco to Paris was diverted to DIA early this morning due to engine problems with the Boeing. It landed safely, and they're still trying to get those passengers to Paris for what they need to do. In Boulder on the Hill this morning, just west of campus, police investigating an armed burglary. At one point, the shelter in place was issued for the area. The suspect is 5'10", non-white, and carrying 3 backpacks, wearing a gray hoodie. Colorado voters will now decide if murder suspects stay behind bars until trial. A bill to take away the right to bail cleared the final Senate hurdle on Thursday. Senator Rhonda Fields.
If you have the resources to come up with the 3 million, 100 million, whatever it is, people who have the means can bond out.
The measure will appear on the November ballot. Former Presidents Obama and Clinton teamed up with President Biden and celebrities like Lizzo in a huge fundraiser last night in New York. They netted over $25 million. Former President Trump was at a wake Thursday honoring a fallen 31-year-old Queens police officer.
It's such a horrible thing, and it's happening all too often, and we're just not going to let it happen. We just can't. 21 times arrested, this thug.
37 in Superior, 38 in Littleton, 43 in Denver. Hey, Billy, are you there?
Yes,
By
sir.
chance?
Yeah,
Hey,
yeah.
do me a favor. Can you cue up You Choose the News music? Don't play it yet. Just
okay.
cue it up. if
Okay,
you
we
don't
are ready,
mind.
sir.
If you don't, thank you very much.
Sure.
The Avs lose in a shootout against the Rangers last night. DU, a 2-1 victory over UMass in the first round of the NCAA hockey tournament. Congratulations to them. The D-backs scored 14 runs in the third inning, and they ruined the Rockies' opening day last night, 6-1 on the road. Alabama and Clemson pull off mild upsets in the Sweet 16. Illinois moves on. So does UConn. The tournament continues today. CU Lady Buffs take on Caitlin Clark and Iowa tomorrow morning, and the Nuggets and the T-Wolves tonight in Lodo. It is Good Friday. And finally, are you ready, Billy?
Yes, sir. You tell me when to hit it.
Ladies and gentlemen, the new theme song of the gay games.
The national anthem.
I had to,
That is
Billy.
good. That is good. I like that. This
I
is
had
better
to.
than that thing they had behind Polis. Again.
That
I
would
just-
be better.
Yeah, I mean, guys, I mean, it's like
Sashay into the stadium.
I know, but there are bands out there. I mean, Blake will get some of these references more than Jeff will, but there are things like there's Lady Gaga. You've got Erasure.
Yes.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
Pet Shop Boys. There's some things you can use, people, but
Right,
no.
the Village People.
Yes, come on. No, and this is what we should have done. It should have been Village People. And, okay, Jeff, you get to choose. I get to choose. Blake, you get to choose.
All right.
Which village person does Jared Polis have to dress up as in the video? Okay. Now, for me, I'm saying police officer because he wants to be law and order. So I think
Yeah.
he's the cop. Okay.
I
Jeff,
like
your
that.
turn. Who do you think Jared Polis has to dress up as a member of the Village People?
Is there a cowboy? I don't know
Yes.
if there is a cowboy.
Well,
He's
if
just got to
not-
put the cowboy hat on backwards
Okay,
like he normally does.
The question, though, is does he wear jeans or is it just the chaps?
Oh. I say the destruction worker. I mean,
construction, that's a good
construction
one.
worker.
Well, that's good. And only if he gets that big 80s sex mustache thing, you know, the porno mustache. That's the only thing. He gets that fake one. Absolutely. Oh,
I'm
that
not
was
going to
brilliant.
sleep tonight.
The pivot.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
going to have to do between this conversation and our next guest, who is a pastor about Easter.
Gino
is
has
incredible.
a sense of humor. Come on.
Oh my gosh,
Hey,
you
guys have a
guys
good
are
weekend.
setting us up.
Again, this is my fault. Of course,
It was Blake who played
Yeah,
the
that was my
music.
I
fault.
know,
I'm
but
sorry.
he knows me. He knows what this
Yes.
does.
Yes.
Okay, we can
That's
blame Blake.
Happy April Fools early. That's
Thank you,
my
Blake.
April Fools. All right, Jeff and Bill continue. Blake Olson, News Talk 710.
Jared
KNUS.
Polis and Chaps. Thank you all.
Here's your 710 5-day forecast. It'll be partly cloudy today. Temperature readings upper 50s and lower 60s. We're looking at temperatures tonight in the middle 30s. Highs tomorrow will be upper 50s. Now, Friday afternoon and evening, Friday night, could bring a few scattered areas of rain showers, isolated thunderstorms. Upper 50s Friday, low 30s Friday night. Mild for Saturday and Sunday, reaching the 60s, turning colder. Late Sunday, Sunday night, and Monday with a chance of showers. Meteorologist Don Day, 710 KNUS.
All right, the pivot for all pivots.
That's totally my fault.
This weekend, Christians all around the world are celebrating the holiest week. Today is Good Friday, which represents the death of Jesus Christ, and then Sunday, his resurrection. And joining us is a familiar voice on Colorado radio, Gino Geraci, 94.7 The Word, KRKS, and pastor at Calvary South Denver in Littleton. Pastor Geraci, thanks so much for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
And I apologize.
Well, you are welcome. And hey, I'm used to people apologizing to me, especially on Good Friday.
Yeah, and obviously you listen to the show too.
Oh, Pastor Geraci, thanks so much for being on the program. Help people understand what Good Friday is. Why do we call it Good Friday? Because it wasn't very good for Jesus Christ.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. You know, obviously, you know that Christianity is the largest quote unquote religion on planet Earth. It's celebrated traditionally as the day that Jesus was crucified. And you're exactly right. It wasn't good for Jesus, but according to the gospel account, it was good for every single Christian because it marks the point that Jesus demonstrates his love, fulfills the prophecy, cleanses us from sin, reconciles us to the Father, And Paul talks about this in Romans chapter 5. He says, but God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And then the apostle Peter writes in 1 Peter, he says, for Christ died for sins once for all, the righteous for the unrighteous, to bring you to God. He put to death in the body, but made alive by the Spirit. And so, again, for thousands of years, Christians celebrate this day as the day that marks hope that your sin can be forgiven and that you can be reconciled to God. And I think it's ironic. Again, that Paul understood the implications of this in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, where he is not naively saying, hey, we just believe by faith that God raised him from the dead. He understands the implications. What happens if it wasn't a meaningful death and the resurrection never took place? And I was thinking about this because there's a local self-proclaimed, self-identified pastor who said that the resurrection doesn't have to be true in order to be meaningful. And I started to reflect on that statement. It doesn't have to be true in order to be meaningful. And I couldn't help but thinking what Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. It is meaningful. It means that the preaching of the gospel is meaningless, that faith in Jesus is worthless, that the preachers who are witnesses to the resurrection are liars, and that human beings are still in their sin. And so, it's fascinating to me, in recent polls, fully 70+% of Americans believe that Jesus rose from the dead, according to the gospel accounts. But there's a growing group of people who simply believe it never happened.
Can we talk about how, because when you initially started, it was a lot of theological kind of statements.
Right.
Man reconciled to God through the beating of and death of a guy 2,000 years ago? Like, how did what happened to Jesus on a day like today reconcile everybody to God?
Yeah, what a great question, because it implies something, that human beings are estranged from God. And so you're exactly right. It is a theological concept, but there seems to be a practical, moral, historical reality. So that's the great big question. Are human beings estranged from God, or are they not estranged from God? So you can imagine there's a growing group of people who would be willing to say, I don't feel connected to God. Well, that's not simply a theological position. It could be a psychological determination. So we have to ask and answer that question. Are human beings estranged from God? Is there something wrong with humanity? Has something gone horribly and terribly wrong with humanity? And if that's the case, then and what I would actually argue is that every single worldview, without exception, every single worldview is willing to concede that something on this planet isn't right. Something in the human heart isn't quite right. How they identify what is not quite right, and then how they solve that problem might differ from group to group and worldview to worldview. But I think every single human being shares the common plight that maybe something has gone horribly and terribly wrong.
That's an incredible perspective, and I think you're exactly right. We're talking with Gino Geraci. He's the lead voice of Crosswalk, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. on 94.7 KRKS, The Word, one of our sister stations here.
Great show.
With Salem. He's a local pastor as well.
And you can listen to his show because we're not on, so it's okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Go listen to him.
So there's something wrong. Obviously, I can't see God, so there's a distance that exists physically right? But then I feel separate from God. And this was what was really personal to me prior to my conversion. And there has to be a conversion, but we'll get to that in a second. I was scrambling for everything, right? I'm desperately trying to get stuff. I'm drinking, I'm chasing girls, I'm chasing wealth. I'm trying to fill something in my heart. What's that?
I said, listening to the village people.
Yeah, right. You're trying to find something to fill a brokenness that you have. So then, how did what Jesus went through fix that? Why can't I just go, well, I want to talk to God now. God, I want you in my life. Why did Jesus have to go through all that?
Yeah, and there seems to be, again, what Christians believe certainly isn't what everybody believes, but Christians believe that rebellion and disobedience caused the estrangement, and that the offense is incalculable because it's against a self-existent eternal being. And what I like to use as an illustration, since you brought up the governor, imagine if Bill slapped Jeff. Could Bill get in trouble for slapping Jeff?
Yeah, Peter Broyles would say yes.
Yeah.
I had to throw that in there.
So, by the way, if Bill slapped the governor, would he be in even greater trouble?
Yeah, exactly.
And if Bill slapped the president of the United States, is it possible he could be shot as he attempts to slap the president?
Yeah.
Because again, in direct proportion, it isn't just simply Jared Polis or Joe Biden. It is an affront to the office and all that office represents. What happens when you offend a self-existent, eternal being who is completely just and completely holy? What should be the consequences of dishonoring, rebelling, even disobeying an eternal self-existent being? So what Christians believe is that infinite offense means that you have to have an infinite solution, and that only Jesus can provide that, because Christians believe that human beings are the ones who have the problem, but that only God can solve the problem. And so that's why historical biblical Christianity teaches that God becomes a human being in the person of Jesus, so that he can satisfy what it means to be a human, but he can also satisfy the infinite justice that God requires for offense.
So Jesus does that, pays that penalty, faces that retribution. Talk about the final moments on the cross when God turns away from him.
Right. And in the New Testament narrative, it would seem that the indication is that God is satisfied with the punishment that Jesus receives on our behalf, and that God is, because he is just and satisfied with the punishment. This is what Christians believe. This is what Paul wrote when he said, God laid on him, well, actually the prophet Isaiah, and Paul repeats it, the iniquity of us all. It is in that moment, that moment of what people in New Testament biblical historical Christianity believe is what's called the atonement. He receives the just punishment that we deserve, but then there is this incredible other event that takes place. His full, wonderful righteousness is then now placed in our account. So not only do we receive the forgiveness of sin, but we are imparted a sense of righteousness. And now we're back to what we talked about earlier, the estrangement. The estrangement is able to be both forgiven and reconciled. And so at the end of this, on Good Friday, Jesus utters the statement in the Greek language. It's tetelestai. It means it is finished, or it is satisfied, or the debt has been paid in full. Now, you might argue the political policies of whether or not student loans should be remitted, and whether the taxpayer should or shouldn't pay for the debts that have been incurred by other people. But according to Christianity, Jesus pays a debt that only he could satisfy, and then we receive the benefits of it. Now we're back to your original question. That's why it's called Good Friday.
Now, could it just have ended with Good Friday? The punishment's been paid, everything's squared away. Why does the resurrection just a few days later matter so much?
No, what a great question, because according to the New Testament, it is the resurrection that confirms that what Jesus said is true. And so Paul will argue in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 that we have every reason to believe that the debt has not been paid if Jesus has in fact not come back to life. And so according to historical biblical Christianity, Jesus rises from the dead in order to prove that everything the New Testament witnesses said about him is true, including what he said about himself. He repeatedly prophesied, I'm going to Jerusalem, I'm going to die, I'm going to come back to life. Paul argues he's a liar and a false prophet if he doesn't come back to life. So one of the arguments that Paul makes is that Jesus himself predicted he would come back to life. And of course, if his predictions failed, then he proves to be a false prophet, not worthy of trust. And so there seems to be good reason to believe that the resurrection is required in order to prove his statements about himself.
And there's also a confrontation with death, right? That death no longer has its sting, that it's no longer the end, that he gives us a picture into what all of our futures are going to look like, that there is going to be a resurrection that takes place.
And that is exactly right. Because again, no matter who you are, and I guess there are people who would suggest that death isn't real, or that it's just a transition, or some religious groups believe it's an illusion. But if death is real, then Christianity answers the question, what happens after you die? Does Jesus really defeat death? And again, Paul argues that that's exactly what the resurrection proves. It proves that death doesn't have the final word.
Talking with Gino Geraci, he's a pastor of Calvary South Denver here in Littleton, and on our sister station, 94.7 FM KRKS, The Word, every day from 4 to 6 p.m. Gino, so if all of this was done, right? All right, the punishment was paid. He resurrected. He ascends into heaven. Jesus does. Everything's good, right? What do I need to do about this? Wasn't the price already paid? Why do I have to make any change in my life or do anything different? Why wasn't that all taken care of?
No, that's great. That too is a great question. Imagine I'm as wealthy as Elon Musk, okay? Just for a moment. I imagine a person could write you a check for $1 million. Now, Bill, do you have a friend who could write you $1 million check?
Yeah, I actually could come up with one or two of them. The question is the would. They would probably say, get away from me, you loser. But I know a couple of people that do have the financial means, but yes.
Imagine you had a friend who not only had the ability to write that check, but you knew that if you took it to the bank, you could cash it.
Oh, yeah.
Would you tear up the check? Would you burn the check? Or would you cash the check?
I would cash the check and do the Scrooge McDuck thing and do a little swimmy in the big giant vault.
Exactly. Well, in order to benefit from the remission of sin, you have to be willing to come to grips and say, no, I really do have a problem. I am estranged from God. My sin has distanced me from God. I want to have a right relationship with God. I want to be reconciled with God. And so that requires you see, a lot of people on Good Friday, they'll look at the cross and they'll say, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then they walk in a different direction and they go their own way. But according to the New Testament scripture, if you pause and if you kneel and if you recognize that Jesus has in fact died for you so that your personal sin could be forgiven and so that you yourself can be reconciled, the Bible says without faith it's impossible to please God. And Paul will write, he'll say, if you confess with your mouth and if you believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. So apparently it requires an acknowledgement and then a willingness to accept what Jesus has done on your behalf. That, my friend, is the gospel. That's the New Testament story. The New Testament story is human beings don't have to stay estranged from God forever. They don't have to remain in their sin. They can, in fact, look forward to something that happens after they die. And that's why the gospel is called the gospel, the good news.
That's wonderful. Gino Geraci, he's a pastor at Calvary, South Denver and Littleton, and a regular voice on 94.7 every afternoon, 4 to 6 p.m., our sister station. Gino, what happens to somebody after they do what you just talked about? They repent of their sins. They say, sorry, God, for what I've done. I'm so grateful for what Jesus Christ did to pay for my sins. I want to practice my faith. I want to live a life following God. I want to live better than I've done before. What happens to a Christian? Is there a helper that shows up to do that?
Yeah, the Bible calls that helper the Holy Spirit. You know, one of the reasons why you may or may not know this. In high school, I was voted most likely to go to hell.
That is great.
I want to know what you were doing in high school.
Yeah, I get some questions.
Well, if you think that's bad, my brother was voted most likely to marry outside of his own species. You know what? That means you're a troubled family. And I actually grew up in a circumstance where Christianity not only was not interesting, I had no desire to be a Christian whatsoever because I knew that I wouldn't be good at it. I'm not good at being good. I'm not good at going to church. You know, if I were to talk to a Christian and say, you know, what do you do for fun? I go to church and I read the Bible. And I would go, yeah, count me out. The reason why I didn't want to be a Christian is because I knew I would be bad at it. And you know what? I was right. I can't live the kind of life that God is calling me to live unless I have help. And that help means that not only do I have to have my sin forgiven, but I need a supernatural help that is going to cause me to think differently and act differently and talk differently and live differently. And that's part of the gospel message as well. It isn't that you just simply change your mind about sin and you change your mind about Jesus. It means that you're willing to accept that God himself will come into your heart and into your life and then give you the strength and power to live the life you could never live on your own strength. That, my friend, is what the Bible calls being born from on high, being renewed. The Bible uses all kinds of different words to describe this transition from darkness to light, from death to life. It uses lots of different metaphors to remind us just how stark and dramatic the change is. Imagine living in a world where the Rockies win every single game and actually go to the Super Bowl the World Series every single time. Now, I'm a Rockies fan. I would love it if the Rockies won every single game.
Or just one. I'd settle for one.
Yes, and yes.
Yeah.
But if they win one at a time, you know what that does? It gives you hope that they're going to win the next game. I'm a Rockies fan.
It tells the
I
Manforts they don't have to spend any more money, and that's the problem. No, I'm kidding.
Right. Well, you know all about, but
Yeah.
you see the metaphor that I'm trying to get at. It is, hey, my expectation isn't to live a perfect life, but rather to live a life that's been redeemed by Christ every single day. And so literally hundreds of millions of people are going to find their way into a church today, and they're going to renew their commitment to what Christ has done for them. And they will maybe go back and live their lives, but each one is living their life in the hopes that what Jesus has really done is going to change not only the way they think, but the way that they act and speak and live.
Talking with Gino Geraci. He's a regular voice, 94.7 The Word, KRKS. You can listen to his show Crosswalk there. All right, so final question. People are interested in going to church this Sunday or tonight for Good Friday services, but they haven't been to church in a long time, maybe never been to church.
Right.
Is it a horribly scary thing to walk into a church? What's going to happen to them when they walk into a church?
The roof is going to fall in on them because they're dirty, rotten sinners. No, that's not what's going to happen. That's what, your worst fear. It's lightning is going to come from the sky. It's going to strike you dead for the hypocrisy of you even pretending to walk into a church. That's probably not what's going to happen. That's, I guess there's the slight chance that it could happen to a few people, but I'm going to suggest to you that for the most part, I think that people are going to be welcomed. They're going to have a sense of not just a tradition that has taken place for hundreds of years, but a sense of community and camaraderie as you gather around a hope. To me, there are two kinds of people in the world: Italian people and people who wish they were. No, there's two kinds of people in the world. There's people who have hope, and there are people who need hope. I don't think it's any problem for people to say, hey, you know what? I want to be a part of a belief system, if you will, that includes hope. Isn't that an interesting concept? The concept of hope. I think about this. What is it that gives a widow courage when she stands before a fresh grave? What's the ultimate hope of a cripple, an amputee, abused or burned victim? How can parents of a brain damaged or physically handicapped child keep from living their lives in total despair? What is it about blindness or deafness or paralysis? How in the world do you see past the pain and the suffering? This is what Christianity actually does. It doesn't just give you an explanation about the problem of sin or an explanation of what might happen when you die. It gives you an explanation of how you can literally deal with pain and senility and insanity and calamity. It says, why in the world should I believe anything? Why should I have hope about anything? This is what the resurrection of Jesus fully and finally addresses.
Gino Geraci, pastor at Calvary South Denver and Littleton. Gino, if someone wanted to attend your church this weekend, where would they go and how would they learn more?
Well, there's a couple of things that they could do. They can go to Calvary South Denver, and there is going to be a resurrection service at Calvary South Denver. That's in Littleton, by the way. And Calvary South Denver is in the southwest corridor. But there are churches all up and down the Front Range where they'll have services, and you might just say, hey, well, is there a church near me? And of course, the answer is, I guarantee you that within driving distance, there's a church near you. But our church is at 9052 West King Carl Avenue in Littleton, Colorado. We'll have a Good Friday service today at noon. The doors will open at 10 on Resurrection Sunday. It'll be wonderful. There'll be music and joy and celebration.
Gino, thank you so much for clearly and simply explaining what the gospel of Jesus Christ is. I remember I grew up, we kind of went to church nominally, but it was when somebody finally just explained what it all meant and how it worked together and what God had done for me and the open invitation that God had for me into a personal relationship. I had a very simple prayer because I was a wild guy. I was partying a lot and I was just desperate and broken. My simple prayer was, God, I'm tired of partying without you. I want to try partying with you. That was it. And I got hit by what I can only describe was a Mack truck that just spiritually knocked me over, changed my entire life, gave me an entirely different vision and worldview about who God was and what he was doing and how I fit into this big plan. And it gave me hope and love and joy in ways I could never describe, but it took somebody just explaining what it all was. Gino, you did a wonderful job of that. Thanks so much for being on the Jeff and Bill Show.
Hey, thank you. And, like I said, millions of people all across the globe, they're going to wake up on Sunday morning and with 3 words on their lips: He is risen.
Amen. He is risen indeed. Thank you so much, Gino. Friends, I know you're thinking about a kitchen or bathroom remodel for this year, and the first call you need to make is to the Art of Granite. Creating that perfect kitchen or bathroom countertop is all about understanding your needs and personal style. That's why communication is key. Mitch Floria is the master craftsman with the Art of Granite and works with his team of highly skilled craftsmen, each with their own unique expertise to help bring your vision to life. From single residential installations to large-scale projects, Mitch and his team at the Art of Granite will listen to you and get you what you need. Mitch provides granite, marble, quartz, and other materials from his own warehouse in Denver West at wholesale prices with no markup, so you can get the most for your budget. Mention KNUS and receive a bathroom countertop free with the purchase of your fantastic new kitchen countertops, or get a kitchen or bathroom sink free with the purchase of any countertop package. Schedule a consultation with Mitch and visit his beautiful showroom in Denver West, or call Mitch at 303-386-5919. That's 303-386-5919, or visit his website at theartofgranite.com to start dreaming about your new countertops. That's theartofgranite.com. We'll get to your calls and texts. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710, KNUS.
At this hour in Brussels, I'm Nishan Garg, and here are the top stories we are following. The head of Taiwan's Navy will visit the United States next week despite increased threats from China towards the island. Tang Hua will attend a military ceremony in Hawaii before traveling to the Sea Air Space Conference near Washington. He may also meet with U.S. Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Lisa Franchetti. In response, China's foreign ministry said it firmly opposed, quote, military collusion between the U.S. and Taiwan and urged Washington to, quote, refrain from sending out any erroneous signal to the forces of secession for the independence of Taiwan. It's been 1 year since American journalist Evan Gershowitz was arrested in Russia on espionage charges, which he denies. Earlier this week, his detention was extended with no trial date in sight. Julia Chapman reports.
On March 29th last year, Evan Gershkovich was on a reporting trip in central Russia when he was apprehended by the security services. The now 32-year-old Wall Street Journal reporter became the first U.S. journalist to be charged with espionage since the Cold War. Gershkovich, the Journal, and the U.S. government have all denied that he is a spy. At a hearing on Tuesday, Gershkovich's detention was extended until the end of June.
And that's what you need to know at this hour. I'm Nishan Garg in Brussels on Salem News Channel.
Okay, Jeff's got a question for you.
Okay, go for it.
You recognize this song? You remember it at all?
What do I know
It's
it
early
from?
90s.
Yeah,
Early
yeah,
90s. Yeah. Now here. This band is crushed by grunge. They disappear off the face of the earth as
Better
soon as
than
Nirvana.
Ezra.
Yes, exactly, sir. Better than
I'm
Ezra.
looking at the
They were
computer.
huge up until Alice in Chains,
And
Nirvana
came.
and Soundgarden. At that moment, their career went on silent.
Yeah,
Absolutely
are they gone?
silent.
They just moved on. They're selling insurance or something.
They actually re-released another album, but it's not going to work. I've heard it. They're going to try to tour. But they were huge. They were even made fun of on Saturday Night Live. They were a joke during the newscast about them, and then all of a sudden, boom! Smells Like Teen Spirit. Yeah, Man in a Box, and we're gone. They're
Sometimes it's not always about being the first in.
You're right. You're right.
You know, I want to get into this. I think this may become a ongoing Friday morning segment for the rest of the election cycle, because it's almost like mean tweets and the top 10 list, but it's just so funny. Why are you voting for Joe Biden in 2024? These are actual honest answers.
Yeah.
Actual honest answers. So I'm not making these up. These are why Joe Biden supporters are actually supporting him. I'm going to get to that in just a second. Hey, your home is a significant asset, and choosing the right team to help you sell it can be the difference in thousands of dollars in your pocket. I highly recommend Gay Ribble and the Empower Home Team. The realtors I trust. Empower Home Team provides exceptional service, invaluable advice, and employs unique systems to maximize the money you can get for your home. Getting an offer above your home's asking price is great, but you're leaving money on the table by not working with Gay Ribble and the Empower Home Team. Gay and her experts get their clients an average of $30,000 more. Could you use an extra $30,000? That's precisely why you need Gay Ribble and the Empower Home Team. Their exclusive database is filled with pre-screened buyers ready to make a purchase. Take the stress and hassle out of selling your home while getting the best price. We had Gay in a studio a week ago today. Delightful, lovely. So what I learned about her is that while most people go to a realtor they know, she's like, I'm going to be the top gun of real estate agents. And so all those other people that maybe don't go to somebody they already know, we can provide great service for them. They have 14,000 pre-approved buyers and have become basically the aces. They're great at what they do. Here's an unbeatable offer. Gay Ribble and the Empower Home Team will sell your house for 100% of the asking price, or Gay will pay you the difference. It's an offer you simply cannot refuse. Get 100% of your price guaranteed with Gay Ribble and the Empower Home Team. Go to gayhasthebuyers.com. That's GAYE hasthebuyers.com, or give them a call at 833-301-SOLD, 833-301-SOLD. All right, you ready?
Yes.
Honest answers.
Yes.
That people on Twitter posted why they're voting for Joe Biden in 2024. We need to come up with some music.
Yeah. We should
drum
do that.
roll.
Yeah,
a
something
little
there.
mean tweets, which is absolutely. I've watched every single one of those. I
Yeah,
love it.
those are great.
Here's the number one most liked, by the way. Biden's getting more accomplished than any president in my lifetime.
Interesting. It depends. On,
I
again,
just laughed out loud with that one.
Well, it depends on what you view as accomplished.
Right. The amount of ice cream consumed.
Yeah. But then again, I mean, and again, if you're talking the issue being the binary choice between Biden and Trump, there aren't a whole lot of legislative style accomplishments that Trump has that he can hang his hat on. If you go down the legislation that each one has passed, I think you'd have to say Biden has succeeded more in that realm.
The most in his lifetime has gotten most done.
If the dude's like 18.
That guy barely goes to bed at 4 o'clock.
I mean, it could be 18, 19 years old. Yeah, it could be. But again, it's perspective and again, the accomplishment. How do you define that? I think that's interesting.
Here's Blue Waves. I'm voting for Biden because he loves dogs.
Okay. Okay. Again, the only question I have
Trump
there
hates
is,
dogs.
Well, the thing is, the only thing I have there is, don't his dogs keep biting people?
I know.
That's the only thing I got. I just have a question there about, but what about the dogs not loving the people? I know. Okay. Continue.
The other guy's going to bring about Armageddon.
Oh, see, and this is the part that I fundamentally disagree with is I disagree that either candidate is going to or even trying to destroy America. And I think that too often when we levy that charge at the person, regardless of the side of the aisle you're at, when you levy that charge that your political opponent is trying to destroy the country, I think you undercut your ability to participate in the conversation. Because in my opinion, you have jumped to the ridiculous.
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
And the only reason like that is I understand people worried, oh, Trump's going to get into power and destroy the country and it's going to turn into, Russia. And I also hear the people, oh, they're the communists and the Marxists in Congress, and the Democrats are trying to do that. And yeah, but they're all millionaires. I don't know a lot of millionaires that are like, ooh, pro-communism. That sounds great. Okay, can we make less money doing what we're doing in Congress? I don't think those people are going to make the laws. They can't make laws to keep themselves from trading stock. You think they're going to make laws? They're going to go, how about we all share the money? They're not sharing the money. So again, okay, continue.
Well, I love, and I want to continue to highlight why people are going to vote for others. I think we could have some fun with this.
Absolutely.
And get into a little mean tweets. I did a mean tweet at the Western Conservative Summit. We had candidates like Rick Santorum, Carly Fiorina, Mike Huckabee read tweets that people had put about them.
That's smart. That is very,
Isn't that
very
fun?
Smart. That is fun. It's fun to do.
We'll play that audio. We'll have to get it because that was a fun one. But yeah,
maybe we should do that with some of the text messages. The problem is that I would have to read a lot more than you. And I would be spending an entire segment sometimes.
Let's go to Gary in Denver. You're on News Talk 710 KNUS. Good morning.
Good morning. I was going to ask you about Gina Geraci, but I think I'd rather talk about what you were just talking about, why people might vote for Biden. And, I'm so over this presidential election. I really don't care. I'm not even interested anymore. But it's more, I don't think whether it's Biden or Trump, and I'm a conservative, I'd rather see a Republican in there. I don't think if either one gets elected, it's not going to be the end of the world in the next 4 years. But what I'd like to do is see Biden get elected or a Democrat get elected, because I want to watch the drama of Trump not being elected and having to deal with all of those lawsuits that he can't dismiss because he's not president, and also watch him pay for his own legal bills.
I think that's destroying our democracy, unfortunately. Gary, thanks so much. I wish we could have a longer conversation. Jeff Hunt here from my friends at Dan Capitalist Law. Dan suggested you should choose a lawyer who shares your values, because who you choose to represent you in an injury case says a lot about you to everyone involved in the case. Dan Capitalist is the son of a police officer. Dan is also a former seminarian. Dan has dedicated the last 40 years of his life to helping people who are hurt in a serious motor vehicle crash. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado history. Dan Capitalist Law is the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche, so you know who Jokic is calling. Dan Capitalist Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. If you need Dan's help, give him a call, 303-770-5551. 303-770-5551, or hit dancapitalistlaw.com. That's Dan, CAPLIS law.com. We'll get to your calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710, KNUS.
Happy Easter to you all.
Happy Easter.
Enjoy the weekend with friends and family. We'll be back on Monday. Huge guest. Not physically.
No.
But in terms of making an impact, Riley Gaines joins us in the 6 o'clock hour on Monday. So don't miss it.
Yeah.
Happy Easter. You've been listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
We're going to be wearing Speedos on Monday. It means I got to shave. News Talk 710 KNUS. Happy Easter.